Chapter 978. Gao Yu, Gong Sunling and Sun Qingxue were all looking at the Ant Guan, but the attention of Shi Shanshan and Yang Chen was always focused on the old ant, who seemed to be trembling and would fall at the next step. This old lady was definitely a master, and she was still a master of the Deshang stage. Her aura was restrained very well, and there was almost no leakage at all, at least in the eyes of Gao Yu, Gong Sunling and Sun Qingxue. She was an old lady who might need others to take care of her. Shi Shanshan, on the other hand, clearly knew the horror of Yagupa. This was a hidden Deshang stage master in the sect. The reason why she was hidden was that she was actually possessed during cultivation, which made her brain not very clear, and she couldn't speak. Aunt Guan's name was Guan Zhenyao. When Yagupa was normal, she took care of her in many ways and loved her very much. So after Yagupa's accident, Guan Zhenyao took the initiative to take care of Yagupa. Although they were not close relatives, they were grateful and reciprocated. This was even a good talk within the Green Jade Immortal Island. Because Yagupa's cultivation deviation burned her brain, she was more focused on cultivation than others. There was nothing else in her eyes except cultivation. Although she may not be able to continue to improve in the big realm, the strength accumulated in the Deshang stage was quite considerable. There were very few people in the Green Jade Immortal Island who knew this, and even at the beginning, basically no one knew except Guan Zhenyao. Later, the sect master and several elders discovered this fact by chance, and Shi Shanshan, as a beloved disciple of the sect, naturally knew some news. Knowing was knowing, but Shi Shanshan only knew that Yagupa had the strength of the Deshang stage. As for how powerful she was, she had never seen it and didn't know. But Yang Chen was different. His combat experience and his spiritual awareness had clearly told him how terrifying Yagupa was not far away in front of him. When there was only cultivation and only fighting left in the mind, and even fear was not known, the combat power that erupted was definitely not what ordinary people could imagine. Otherwise, why would people say that some crazy people were madmen? It was because of the horror of madmen. This dumb ant was undoubtedly classified as this kind of master. Now, it seemed that Shi Shanshan's martial uncle Guan had used some unknown method to control this terrifying expert. That was why he had the confidence to make a move here. Not only that, but Guan Zhenyao had probably bought a compass from Li Liheng that could track Yang Chen. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to pinpoint Yang Chen's location so accurately and block Yang Chen's family. Yang Chen also knew that Li Liheng's spiritual awareness imprint could expose his whereabouts, but this was a double-edged sword. Obviously, it was more important to help the Taishaman than to reveal his whereabouts. Perhaps the day when the Taishaman were completely destroyed would be the day when he would completely erase Li Liheng's spiritual consciousness imprint. Guan Zhenyao not only tracked the last position of Yang Chen's disappearance, but also waited here for an unknown amount of time, and arranged an attack and siege formation to ensure that Yang Chen's family could not escape. If the strength of the dumb ant was added, Yang Chen's family of 5 would obviously be eaten to death. Of course, this was Guan Zhenyao's idea, at least her current idea. Although Yang Chen and the others used an egg-shaped protective magic weapon to protect several people, there was no way to escape the siege of the formation she had carefully arranged. Now she could state her conditions first. Yang Chen, if you want the lives of your family of 5, take out what Hu Qianni wants from you. After Guan Zhenyao yelled at Shi Shanshan, she turned to Yang Chen. It had to be said that there were many smart people in this world. Yang Chen just threw out a pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill, and it would never make everyone think that this was what Hu Qianni was pursuing. Of course, the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill was important enough to explain Hu Qianni's motives to some people. However, when Yang Chen sold the pill recipe, the Taishaman did not make a move this time. What does this mean? Either the Taishaman had already obtained the pill recipe, or Yang Chen and the Taishaman had an agreement. Either way, it should not be a reason for Hu Qianni to make a move. So naturally, Yang Chen had something else to make Hu Qianyi tempted, even to the extent of attacking Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingshu. Guan Zhengyao felt that this was a good opportunity. If it was really the key to Yang Chen becoming a fifth-grade alchemist master, then with her own attainments in alchemy, it should not be impossible to replace Yang Chen as a fifth-grade alchemist master after getting the thing. So, the smart Guan Zhengyao chose a way that she thought was appropriate. On the one hand, to suppress and retaliate against Shi Shanshan, on the other hand, it was to get something from Yang Chen's hands, a two-pronged approach. With Yagupa there, everything was not a problem, not to mention the siege of the formation that she had carefully prepared for decades. Today, even if Yang Chen's family had wings, they could not fly out of Guan Zhenyao's Wuji Mountain. Do you think I will give it to you in this situation? Yang Chen was not as angry as Shi Shanshan. He was not a disciple of the Green Jade Immortal Island, and he didn't have to think too much about the Green Jade Immortal Island. Either you give it to me yourself, or I get it from your body, you choose one. Guan Zhengyao was really full of confidence, and the tone of her speech was as if she was in charge of everything and could not be refused. Guan Zhengyao couldn't help but be proud. The power of Yagupa, except for her, no one else knew at all. If she didn't know this, how could she, a proud daughter of heaven, go back to take care of an old woman who was already crazy? She saw with her own eyes that Yagupa fought against two masters in the middle Deshang stage of the sect alone without falling behind, and even injured the two masters. The sect didn't know the power of Yagupa until the two masters recovered from their injuries, and before that, Guan Zhengyao had fully gained the trust of the sect to take care of Yagupa. Shanshan, I'm sorry. Yang Chen did not answer Guan Zhenyao's question, but gave a regretful sentence to Shi Shanshan. At the same time, his eyes did not leave Yagupa, who had not moved behind Guan Zhengyao. Of course, Shi Shanshan also noticed Yang Chen's gaze, and even understood Yang Chen's meaning. The reason why he said sorry to her was obviously that he intended to ruin this peerless master of the Green Jade Immortal Island. Subconsciously, Shi Shanshan said to Yang Chen, "Don't." Although Yagupa was crazy, she was also a fighting force of the Green Jade Immortal Island. It was a pity that she was ruined by Guan Zhengyao. It's too late to beg for mercy now. Guan Zhenyao's face finally showed a smug smile. She had even heard the meaning of compromise from Yang Chen's word. Chapter 979. It's not too late, it's just a small Taishu Yin and Yang Nine Heavens formation. Yang Chen said the name of the formation that trapped everyone. How do you know? Guan Zhenyao's face was stunned, and then she showed an incredible expression. What are you going to do? In the hands of Yang Chen, it was not known when a khaki flying sword had appeared. It was the life source magic weapon that had never been used from the hands of the Taishaman elder Ming Guangrua, the flying sword. This living soil flying sword contained a trace of living soil qi. As long as it was used for a long time, this living soil would slowly swallow the surrounding materials and gradually increase itself. Although it would take thousands of years or even longer for this trace of living soil qi to double, this did not hinder the strength of the flying sword. Especially when this flying sword was still in the mouth of Xiao Tian, it was even more so. Yang Chen grabbed Xiao Tian and slashed in the direction of several formation eyes that he knew. If it was an ordinary flying sword, this kind of chopping action would not have any effect. But now it was different. The living soil flying sword was held in the mouth of Xiao Tian, which was a completely different effect. Whiz, a few sword lights visible to the naked eye, separated from the blade of the flying sword and flew to the position that Yang Chen wanted to cut. Boom, there were a few consecutive sounds, and the place that was hit by the sword light began to explode. How is this possible? Guan Zhengyao had prepared for this day for a long time. She was good at alchemy and even studied the formation of the Taishu Yin and Yang Nine Heavens formation. When she personally experimented, not to mention the sword light, even if she personally urged the flying sword to stand in the formation and attack the position of the formation eye, it was impossible. Now Yang Chen actually achieved something that she couldn't imagine with a few sword lights. How could she not exclaim? Although she was surprised, Guan Zhenyao was also a master of the late Yuanying stage. She didn't dare to say that her combat experience was very rich, but she also knew that now was not the time to be surprised. When the formation Eye of the Taishu Yin and Yang Nine Heavens formation began to explode, Guan Zhenyao said very softly to Yagupa behind her, "Gupa, they are bad people, kill them." The old lady, who had been standing there trembling, suddenly raised her head. Suddenly, her eyes flashed. Her originally stooped and thin body suddenly began to swell crazily like an inflated balloon. In the blink of an eye, she had transformed from a skinny old lady into a muscular woman. The long crutch that was half taller than her had become a stick at this time. The old lady didn't even make a sound. She swung the crutch high and smashed it down on Yang Chen, who had already rushed to the front. Yagupa had almost forgotten many of her previous attacks because of cultivation deviation. The only thing she didn't forget was to pick up the dragon head walking stick that she had refined into her life magic weapon to hit people. This most direct and crisp attack method was the most comfortable method that Yagupa felt. The formation Eye was blown up by Yang Chen, and the formation naturally began to lose its effect slowly. Yang Chen's figure naturally had no obstacles anymore, and he rushed directly to the front. Boom! At the moment when the dragon head walking stick collided with the live soil flying sword, the surrounding canyon seemed to explode, as if a small nuclear bomb had been detonated, and the whole canyon burst open. Countless flying stones and dust shrouded everyone's figure in it, and no trace of them could be seen anymore. Humph, overestimating yourself, a little Yuanying stage cultivator dares to show his teeth to Aunt Gupa. Although she couldn't see what happened, and her spiritual awareness couldn't detect the situation around Yagupa, Guan Zhenyao still laughed happily. But soon she remembered something and suddenly exclaimed, "Aunt, be careful, don't break his Qianquan bag." Obviously, Guan Zhenyao was afraid that after Yagupa broke Yang Chen's Qianquan bag, her arrangements would fail. She had seen the power of Yagupa's move with her own eyes. Two masters of the Deshang stage couldn't take it. Yang Chen was just a novice in the Yuanying stage. This time, maybe he had already turned into meat paste. Buzz, a low bell sounded, and Guan Zhenyao suddenly felt a shock in her mind, and she felt dizzy. The smoke and dust in front of her suddenly dissipated, revealing the figures of Yagupa and Yang Chen. How is this possible? Even in a dizzy state, seeing the scene in front of her, Guan Zhenyao couldn't help but exclaim. On Yang Chen's body, it was not known when a golden bell appeared, and his figure was completely shrouded in it. Yagupa's dragon head crutch hit the bell in front of Yang Chen, motionless. On the surface of the golden bell, there were two illusory dragon shadows moving up and down, constantly flying. This scene was completely different from Guan Zhenyao's imagination of Yang Chen turning into a pile of meat paste, and Guan Zhenyao couldn't help but exclaim. Yagupa didn't know how to hold back. This crutch must have been smashed down with all her strength, but it didn't kill Yang Chen. It seemed that even Yang Chen's protective magic weapon was not broken. What kind of magic weapon could block the full blow of Yagupa in the Deshang stage? Guan Zhenyao's brain was already a little dizzy, and she couldn't accept this fact at all. But what shocked her even more was still behind. After Yang Chen's golden bell, it was his living soil flying sword. At this moment, the blade of the flying sword was cutting into the dragon head crutch of Yagupa, and it had already cut in by almost half an inch. Not only that, as the two people increased their strength, the blade seemed to cut deeper, and after a while, it might directly cut off the crutch. This was Yagupa's life source magic weapon. It was unknown how many battles she had experienced, and it had never been damaged. Now it was destroyed like this. Even if Yagupa's brain wasn't working well, the pain on her face was not concealed. Even if she didn't know pain, the damage of her life source magic weapon was closely related to her mind, and it was extremely painful at this time. Before Guan Zhenyao could react, Yang Chen and Yagupa each had an empty hand and had already blasted towards each other. With two loud bangs, the fists of the two hit each other's bodies at the same time. This time, even Yang Chen's golden bell didn't block Yagupa's fist. Yang Chen's figure flew up directly, flew back dozens of steps, and fell directly into the arms of Gao Yu, who was following behind him. Even Gao Yu couldn't help but step back a few steps before the force disappeared. Looking at this scene, Guan Zhenyao's face showed a smile again. Yagupa's fist was no worse than a magic weapon, and even a body protection magic weapon might not be able to block it. At this point, the uselessness of Yang Chen's golden bell had already explained the problem. But Guan Zhenyao's smile only appeared for a moment, and immediately turned into a shocked expression. Chapter 980. Yagupa, who was almost invincible in Guan Zhenyao's mind, was no better than Yang Chen. Her swollen body kept retreating, and while retreating, she spurted blood from her mouth. After retreating a dozen steps in a row, Yagupa's legs and feet could no longer keep up with the retreating momentum brought by Yang Chen's punch, and she immediately fell to the ground. But her body didn't stop because Yagupa fell to the ground. She still maintained the inertia and slid quickly toward the back. It continued to slide on the ground for several feet before coming to a stop. The ground where Yagupa slid left a series of bloodstains. The red traces continued all the way for several feet, which was shocking to see. How was this possible? The first thought that appeared in Guan Zhenyao's mind was impossible. How could such a thing happen? Yagupa was a master of the Deshang stage, and Yang Chen was just a junior in the early Yuanying stage. How could such an effect appear when the two of them punched each other? Although Yang Chen was also sent flying, he didn't look injured at all, and even flying back seemed to be a way to unload the force. But the Deshang stage master Yagupa, who had punched Yang Chen, who once repelled two Deshang stage masters with a stick, was punched by Yang Chen until she vomited blood. Not only that, after Yagupa fell to the ground, it seemed that there was no other movement except vomiting blood. Until now, she was still lying in the same place without moving, and she had fainted. Guan Zhenyao's head exploded, and her whole body became dizzy. She was already frightened by the scene in front of her. The array that she carefully arranged was destroyed by Yang Chen's sword in the air, and even Yagupa, who she relied on as her last resort, was punched to death. How could this be? Guan Zhenyao was dizzy here, but it didn't mean that Shi Shanshan and others would also be dizzy. This woman actually wanted to kill Shi Shanshan because her qualifications were better than hers. Today, she wanted to keep everyone here. How could the women let her go? When Guan Zhenyao woke up from that shock, she immediately found that she had fallen into the encirclement of 4 women. Yang Chen, on the other hand, had already walked to Yagupa's side and was looking down at Yagupa's situation. Seeing this, Guan Zhenyao calmed down. She was in the late Yuanying stage, but all the women were in the early Yuanying stage. As long as it was not Yang Chen who could stun a Deshang stage master with a terrifying punch, she didn't put the 4 early Yuanying stage masters in her eyes. Even if he couldn't kill the 4 women quickly, it wouldn't be a problem for him to escape alone. Humph, do you think I'll be afraid when it's 4 against 1? Guan Zhenyao was now sure that Yang Chen had no intention of interfering. He had already sat down on the side of Yagupa and stuffed an unknown medicinal pill to Yagupa. If Yang Chen were to make a move, Guan Zhenyao would not dare to be so careless. Shi Shanshan slightly shook her head at the other 3 women. The 3 women silently moved away a little, but they still formed a small circle around Guan Zhenyao. 4 against 1? You really think highly of yourself. Facing Guan Zhenyao, Shi Shanshan shook her head very contemptuously. The tone of her speech was exactly the same as when Yang Chen solved her inner demons for her. Facing Guan Zhenyao, who was in the late Yuanying stage alone, Shi Shanshan was not afraid at all. Instead, there was a sense of excitement from the bottom of her heart. This feeling was like the impulse of eagerness to try when she was really going to face a touchstone after carefully preparing for a long time. Yes, in Sher Shanshan's mind, the timing of Guan Zhenyao's appearance was really just right. Sher Shanshan had just restored her cultivation base, and was promoted to the Yuanying stage not long ago, and then honed in the formation of the secret plane for almost a whole year. Then she accompanied Yang Chen for double cultivation and listened to Yang Chen's analysis of her shortcomings in combat and the defects in her state of mind, adjusting and consolidating her cultivation base for almost 10 years. During these 10 years, although there was a delay in tempering her life source magic weapon, most of the time, for Sher Shanshan, was the best time for cultivation. Even in the Green Jade Immortal Island, under the guidance of her master and a group of predecessors, it seemed that the effect of cultivating next to Yang Chen was not as good. There was no way around it. In the history of the Green Jade Immortal Island, the only few people with the innate spirit root full value had already ascended, and they were not of the metal attribute. The guidance of the elders was nothing more than teaching Sher Shanshan their cultivation experience, but this was not necessarily completely suitable for her. Many things, for people with insufficient qualifications, it was much more difficult to cultivate, and they could only achieve it after thousands of twists and turns. But for people with good qualifications, it was likely to be a natural and easy thing. Sometimes, a simple thing was extremely difficult, and it gave Sher Shanshan a crooked path in vain, and she had to spend more time to recover. But with Yang Chen, there was no such problem at all. In the heavenly court, Yang Chen didn't know how many talented geniuses he had seen. Their past experiences were simply a broad road for Sher Shanshan. What's more, many of the directions were directly explained by Yang Chen according to the later achievements of Sher Shanshan in his previous life, saving Sher Shanshan who didn't know how many twists and turns. Under the guidance of Yang Chen, Sher Shanshan was simply reborn. At this time, she realized how many detours she had taken in her previous cultivation. Naturally, Yang Chen's performance also made Sher Shanshan completely convinced. The aloof and incomparable fairy, in front of her own evildoer husband, completely lowered her arrogant head. Even under the bed, Yang Chen also enjoyed a different taste that Yang Chen himself couldn't imagine. Now Sher Shanshan, who had reached the extreme of this stage of cultivation, was feeling itchy, and Guan Zhenyao was immediately sent to her. Was there anything more wonderful than this? For the one-on-one duel between Sher Shanshan and Guan Zhenyao, the other three women didn't dare to be careless, for fear that Sher Shanshan would suffer a big loss. Although everyone would sometimes intentionally or unintentionally divide into two small groups in front of Yang Chen to compete for favor with each other, they were the same in the outside world. While staring closely at Sher Shanshan and Guan Zhenyao, they also paid attention to Yang Chen's intentions. Yang Chen seemed to have nothing happened, and he was taking care of Yagupa with ease. This Guan Zhenyao was a bastard, but Yagupa, who was indirectly controlled by Guan Zhenyao, was innocent. Fortunately, Yang Chen's punch didn't use his full strength. Otherwise, with his realm of the second layer of river-turning strength, he could beat Yagupa into meat paste with one punch. Sher Shanshan not only had the spiritual awareness of the Deshang stage, but she also cultivated the seventh metal true secret art and dual cultivated with Yang Chen. Yin and Yang were in harmony. Even if Guan Zhenyao was twice as powerful, without entering the Deshang stage, it would be impossible for her to deal with Sher Shanshan. Chapter 981. The result of the battle was as Yang Chen expected. Even if Guan Zhenyao's cultivation base was already at the peak of the Yuanying stage, even if she already had the life-flying sword, it was still not enough in front of Sher Shanshan. Sher Shanshan's combat effectiveness was fully reflected in this battle. The unprecedented strength also shocked Sher Shanshan herself. The more proficient she was in the battle, the more Sher Shanshan admired her husband's guidance. If it weren't for this, Sher Shanshan would only be able to escape when she met Guan Zhenyao at this time. She might be able to save her life, but she was definitely not her opponent. The battle lasted for a long time. At least Yang Chen had taken care of Yagupa to take the medicine. He sat there and put out a tea set to make a pot of good tea. After drinking it with the other 3 women, the battle was over. Guan Zhenyao's whole body was soft as she was carried by Shi Shanshan, and came to everyone. At this moment, Guan Zhenyao no longer had the arrogant posture she had before. She was carried in Shi Shanshan's hand, and her face was ashen like a fool. After she used all her means, she was broken by Shi Shanshan one by one, and then she went straight into the palace and captured her. During this period, Shi Shanshan showed extraordinary combat effectiveness, so that Guan Zhenyao had completely lost the confidence to compete with Shi Shanshan. She is a disciple of my sect. I want to keep her life. Shi Shanshan faced Yang Chen and the women, but she had a rare soft expression, with a little pleading, and no longer had the performance of a cold fairy. Guan Zhenyao wanted to kill everyone, and everyone naturally wouldn't let her go easily. But it seemed unreasonable to just let her go, so Shi Shanshan would plead with everyone like this. Especially Yang Chen. Shi Shanshan's eyes were always looking at Yang Chen. Although Yang Chen didn't seem to be that bloodthirsty in the past, after living with Yang Chen for decades, she had a better understanding of Yang Chen's character. Especially in recent years, although Yang Chen had not killed a single person, the surging killing intent in his heart could not be hidden from her, the person who slept with him. Ah Ling, something good has come to my door again. Yang Chen just smiled faintly at Shi Shanshan's earnest request and gave Shi Shanshan an answer, which could be considered as a promise to Shi Shanshan. Shi Shanshan was overjoyed. The tenderness in her eyes almost made Yang Chen lose himself. In his previous life, who would have dared to imagine that the cold plum fairy would reveal such an expression toward someone? Guan Zhenyao didn't die, but she wasn't much better off. Although she could cultivate freely in the mountain river geographical map, she was trapped in someone else's world for life, and she could never escape. This result made the women satisfied, and it also saved Shi Shanshan from carrying the charge of killing her fellow disciples, although it was Guan Zhenyao who came to her first. The battle just now was very good. After dealing with Guan Zhenyao, Yang Chen reached out and handed Shi Shanshan a cup of fragrant tea. This is just brewed, and the heat is just right. Is there anything more wonderful than receiving a cup of her favorite tea from her husband after winning a battle with all her strength? At least Shi Shanshan hadn't encountered it before. After enjoying the small cup of tea full of 7th metal true essence, Shi Shanshan suddenly felt relaxed and unspeakably comfortable. Is Yagupa okay? Shi Shanshan asked about Yagupa after enjoying it. She knew that her husband also considered that he still had to gain a foothold in the sect, so he didn't kill Yagupa. As for why Shi Shanshan had no doubt that Yang Chen could kill Yagupa in the Desheng stage, this was purely the tacit understanding between husband and wife. Needless to say, Shi Shanshan also had this confidence. She can still be saved. Yang Chen directly gave Shi Shanshan a reassuring answer. The injury of her previous cultivation deviation may also be cured. Really? Shi Shanshan couldn't believe her ears. Yagupa's injury has been seen by many masters in the sect, and even some masters from other sect were found to diagnose. Almost everyone agreed that there was basically no hope of recovery. Yang Chen actually said that she could still recover. How could Shi Shanshan not be overjoyed? Before Yagupa was mute and didn't have a cultivation deviation, she was definitely a master with a promising future in the Green Jade, Immortal Island. Even except for those great elders, no one in the Green Jade, Immortal Island could be compared with Yagupa. Her combat power was unparalleled. If it weren't for her cultivation deviation, maybe there would be another great elder in the Green Jade, Immortal Island now. But now Yagupa could only be reduced to a situation where she had almost no consciousness of her own and was controlled like a puppet by Guan Zhenyao. The dignified Desheng stage master was so reduced that countless people sighed. Yang Chen's words, in the ears of Shi Shanshan, were better than any sweet words. These days with Yang Chen, Shanshan has thoroughly understood that the sect would hardly be able to give her more guidance in the future. She was almost equivalent to leaving the sect. But in her heart, Shanshan still had a deep feeling for the sect. If Yagupa could be cured, it would definitely be a big event that would make the entire Green Jade Immortal Island excited. How could Shanshan, a loyal disciple of the Green Jade Immortal Island, not be overjoyed? Maybe we have to stay in the Green Jade Immortal Island for a while. Yang Chen nodded and said with a smile, when we finish these things we will go to the Demon Continent. Going to the Demon Continent to hone their skills has always been the goal that Yang Chen and the girls had set a long time ago. Hearing this, all the girls were refreshed. They were also looking forward to this. After experiencing these things in the Central Plains Dao sects, maybe the killing in the Demon Continent would improve their state of mind more. Yagupa just maintained her injury and remained unconscious, and Yang Chen did not cure her. Who knows if she would fight with Yang Chen as soon as she woke up now, and many things had to wait for Shanshan and the people of the Green Jade Immortal Island to make it clear before they could do anything. Otherwise, Yang Chen was not that kind of good person. After the group of people packed up, they went straight to the East China Sea Green Jade Immortal Island. The harvest this time was simply beyond everyone's expectations, especially Yang Chen. He would never have thought that there would be such a good thing as ninth water spiritual solution in this secret plane. There was also an immortal body left, which was even more unexpected. Speaking of the secret plane, Yang Chen suddenly came up with an idea. The last time the Taishaman's consciousness clone descended, it was to tell them the location and danger of the secret plane. Maybe the next time he crosses the border with Li Liheng, he would also tell him this good news, so that the Taishaman would be happy. He believed that at that time, the faces of the Taishaman's high-level officials would be very wonderful. Chapter 982. When everyone rushed to the Green Jade Immortal Island, it was already half a year later. This place was very far from the Green Jade Immortal Island. Even if it was Yang Chen's shuttle, it took 6 months to arrive. Shanshan didn't hide anything about Guanzhenyao in front of everyone in the sect, and she told them the whole story. Apart from the final punishment, everything else was revealed in full. Of course, Shanshan wouldn't say that Yang Chen knocked down Yagupa with one punch. She only said that a few people desperately blocked Yagupa, and after Shanshan subdued Guanzhenyao, Yagupa stopped by herself. As for Yagupa's injury, a few people didn't control it at once. Anyway, everyone knew that Yang Chen had a very powerful defensive magic weapon, and it was normal for several people to work together to block Yagupa's attack. On the contrary, Shanshan subdued Guanzhenyao alone, which made all the high-level members look at her with admiration. The existence of Yagupa proved Shanshan's statement, at least half of it. No one in the sect knew that Yagupa had been taken outside by Guanzhenyao, and Yagupa was asked to kill people. From this point of view, Guanzhenyao had a lot of suspicion. Guanzhenyao was also the focus of the sect, but as Guanzhenyao herself said, after Shanshan appeared, the sect allocated a part of its resources to provide Shanshan. It was precisely because of this that Guanzhenyao felt that Shanshan robbed her position in the sect, so she would do this. In fact, Guanzhenyao entered the Yuanying stage a long time earlier than Shanshan, but she has been trapped in the peak Yuanying stage and has never been able to break through, because there was a problem in her state of mind, and some things couldn't be seen. Now everyone thought about it, but it turned out to be entangled in this, which really made people speechless. The Green Jade Immortal Island attached great importance to every genius disciple. In fact, there was no bias toward one or a few, but some people couldn't see it and always thought that what belonged to them was taken away. Such people, cultivating to the peak Yuanying stage, was already the limit. If one's state of mind did not grow, how could one achieve Mahayana? In this way, the disappearance and death of several genius disciples in the Green Jade Immortal Island before may also be because of Guanzhenyao. As long as they investigated Guan Zhenyao's whereabouts at the time of the incident, they might be able to confirm it. Harming fellow disciples was a huge crime in any Taoist sect. If the sect allowed this to happen, then it wouldn't be far from falling apart. Of course, some small disagreements were unavoidable, but they could not escalate to the point of life and death. Can Yagupa's injury be treated? The senior members of the Green Jade Immortal Island didn't pursue too much about Guan Zhenyao, but when Shi Shanshan said that Yang Chun could cure Yagupa, all the senior members were surprised, and then ecstatic. Yagupa's combat power, apart from those great elders, was firmly ranked at the forefront of all the Deshang stage masters of the Green Jade Immortal Island. This was not an exaggeration, but an actual battle record. Every Deshang stage master of the Green Jade Immortal Island has fought against Yagupa. However, no one could defeat Yagupa's dragon head crutch. Unfortunately, Yagupa didn't have too much consciousness. In most cases, she only responded to killing intent, and at other times, she wouldn't take the initiative to fight at all, which made the people of the Green Jade Immortal Island feel regretful. They didn't know what method Guan Zhenyao used to make Yagupa listen to her command and kill people for Guan Zhenyao. Guan Zhenyao's practice had already provoked public anger. But Yagupa was innocent, she was just a poor person who was implicated, and she was still a poor person with strong combat power. Now Yang Chun actually said that he could cure Yagupa, which made everyone overjoyed. Once Yagupa recovered, it would be no less than adding 2 more Deshang stage masters to the Green Jade Immortal Island. You know, even if 2 masters of the middle Deshang stage joined forces, they were not as powerful as Yagupa. Can she really be cured? The Lord of Tantai asked again with some disbelief. There is an 80% chance. Yang Chun had already diagnosed Yagupa in detail along the way, and the answer was not 100% sure. But some words must be made clear in advance, so as not to ask for trouble in the future. Of course, it may also fail. If it fails, what will be the consequences? The Lord of Tantai looked at Yagupa, who was still very weak, and asked with some worry. The consequence of failure is that she may be even crazier. Yang Chun replied truthfully, and it is likely that she will no longer be so peaceful, killing people on sight. In this case, the consequences were quite serious. Yagupa, who burned her brain and became an idiot, could be said to be safe on weekdays, but once she killed people on sight, no one in the Green Jade Immortal Island could stop Yagupa. This was the Green Jade Immortal Island. Once Yagupa went crazy, it was estimated that within 1,000 miles, it would be in ruins. It's a big deal. I'll take the liberty to ask, what is going on with Yagupa's injury? The Lord of Tantai couldn't make a decision for a while, and as for the other elders, they were also pondering. As a last resort, the Lord of Tantai could only get more things from Yang Chun for judgment. To put it bluntly, the root cause is still her cultivation deviation. Yang Chen's words were equivalent to not saying anything. Several elders of the Green Jade Immortal Island who heard this couldn't help but roll their eyes in their hearts. Who wouldn't say this kind of thing? Do they still need Yang Chen to say it? Actually, I have learned about Yagupa's life, and I probably know why she went crazy. Immediately afterward, Yang Chen's words made everyone interested. It was also good for them to be able to understand the reason for a master's cultivation deviation. At least they could avoid problems in their cultivation for the same reason in the future. The root cause of Yagupa's cultivation deviation lies in her invincibility. Yang Chen's words sounded slowly. Since Yagupa was promoted to the Deshang stage, she has never been defeated in all the battles she has experienced. This has also led to Yagupa's eccentric character that doesn't put the world in her eyes. This is the root cause. Yagupa thinks that she is invincible in the world, so she has no scruples when cultivating, so she will go crazy. Yang Chen's words were not fast, and everyone heard it very clearly. Yang Chen's words were also more implicit, but everyone had already understood. Yagupa thought that she was invincible in the world, So her state of mind had been unable to improve, and the result of forced cultivation was the result of cultivation deviation. She was arrogant and always believed in it in her heart, so there would be such an ending. What can be done to cure it? The Lord of Tantai was speechless for a while and then asked softly. Chapter 983. It's actually very simple. Yang Chen smiled and said slowly in the eyes of everyone, defeat her and let her know that she is not invincible in the world. Everyone present was stunned for a while, everyone looked at each other, and all fell into a speechless silence. Defeating Yagupa, it was easy to say, if it could be defeated, why wait until now? In hundreds of years, no one has been able to do it, even when Yagupa has lost her mind. Yang Chen's 4 wives have now been enlightened. Since the cause of Yagupa's cultivation deviation has been found, in fact, Yang Chen has cured Yagupa's madness, but because he hasn't negotiated with the Green Jade Immortal Island, he hasn't treated her injury yet. One punch made Yagupa vomit blood, and he was unscathed. Was it considered defeating Yagupa? There was no need for everyone to say anything more about this. What they saw with their own eyes, or what happened to their husband, made the 4 women sincerely proud. Unfortunately, this kind of pride could only be known by the 4 of them and couldn't be said to others. If others were to know that Yang Chen alone defeated the #1 expert of the Green Jade Immortal Island besides the Taishaman with 1 punch, it was unknown how many people would go crazy. They also knew that their husband was not a person who would be so casual and high-profile. Although he was now the only 5th-grade alchemist master in the world and was already very high-profile, the more cards he had, the better. Yagupa has been like this for 300 years, right? The Lord of Tantai did not make a decision directly, but said this sentence in a nostalgic tone. A question made several elders around him couldn't help but sigh. Yagupa, who was so powerful in the past, was now an idiot who couldn't speak. How big was the contrast? People couldn't help but sigh. It's been more than 300 years. One of the elders also replied with some nostalgia. Instead of living like this, maybe in her heart, she would rather die. The Lord of Tantai followed the elder's words and said again. Everyone present was a master, and they all nodded with some sadness in their hearts. Let Elder Tai Tong prepare, if it doesn't work, let Yagupa go. The island master finally made a decision, and it was also a somewhat cruel decision. Let her go easily. Obviously, this was the island master's agreement to let Yang Chen treat her. Even the consequences of failure had been considered, and he had arranged for the Great Elder to prepare. Except for the Great Elder, it was impossible for others to deal with Yagupa. As for Yang Chen's words, no one doubted it at all. Everyone believed that since he said that he had an 80% chance to cure Yagupa, then he must have such a big chance. If he said there would be any possible consequences after failure, then there must be such consequences. If he said there would be any possible consequences after failure, then there must be such consequences. This was Shi Shanshan's sect. Even if Yang Chen would not do this kind of thing for free, he could also look at Shi Shanshan's face and wait for Yagupa to recover. Yagupa's injury was nothing in Yang Chen's hands. A 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was enough. What mattered was her mind. Yagupa's injury was nothing in Yang Chen's hands. A 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was enough. What mattered was her mind. The injury of Yagupa was nothing in Yang Chen's hands. A 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was enough. The important thing was her mind. To stimulate the mind of Yagupa, Yang Chen needed to use a powerful spiritual awareness to shake it. It was also a life-and-death step for Yagupa, and no one could disturb her. Stimulating Yagupa's mind required Yang Chen to use his powerful spiritual awareness to shock, which was also a step of life and death for Yagupa, and no one could disturb her. After all, Yang Chen had only used his physical strength to cause damage and did not have the same effect as the continuous destruction caused by his spiritual power. At present, Yagupa's mind was still controlled by Yang Chun, and she couldn't wake up until Yang Chun felt that the injury on Yagupa's body had completely improved. Then he pressed one hand on the back of Yagupa's head and suddenly used the beast-controlling secret art to launch a spiritual awareness shock attack on Yagupa's sea of consciousness. This attack can't be too strong, otherwise Yagupa will directly die from brain death, but it can't be too weak, otherwise it won't have the effect. Fortunately, Yang Chen's spiritual sense was now strong to a certain extent, and he could control it with ease, almost without the slightest error. Then, Yang Chen and Shi Shanshan quickly left the quiet room and were replaced by Grand Elder Tong. Once Yagupa couldn't recover, Elder Tong was the candidate to end Yagupa's pain. Of course, to deal with Yagupa, Elder Tong would not be completely without a price. The price she had to pay was to open the seal formation and immediately ascend. Because of Elder Tong, this time they chose a quiet room on a remote island, and the surrounding area had been emptied, lest Elder Tong's tribulation and ascend would implicate others. In the expectation of a group of people, there were no tribulation clouds gathering in the sky, which meant that Elder Tong had not unlocked the seal. Similarly, this also meant that Yagupa was fine for the time being. The senior executives of the Green Jade Immortal Island, who were waiting anxiously, finally began to slowly feel relieved. After waiting for another half an hour, there was nothing unusual at all, and then they heard Elder Tong's call, "Okay, it's okay." A group of people couldn't wait to rush to the island and rushed into the quiet room, and then everyone was stunned. Opposite Elder Tong, there was a middle-aged woman with tears on her face. Although there were faint crow's feet on her face, it was by no means the appearance of an old woman before. The appearance of this middle-aged woman was Yagupa before she went crazy. "Greetings, Island Master." In the surprised eyes of everyone, Yagupa stood up and bowed to the group of people who came in. "Greetings, Elder." All the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island who came in, except for Elder Tong, everyone else had a dumbfounded expression. Yagupa, could she speak? And looking at her performance, did she really return to normal? This old woman used to be arrogant, short-sighted, and 300 years of mute was like a dream. Facing a group of senior executives of the Green Jade Immortal Island, Yagupa bowed her head again and said, "Finally, it's a blessing in disguise, and I understand the way of heaven and earth. This disciple is willing to wait for the sect for 500 years, please allow the Island Master." Yagupa's strength was strong. This mute, her mind was free of distractions, and naturally, her cultivation base went up to the next level. Now that her mind was restored, she understood that today was yesterday, and her state of mind was improved, and she immediately reached the edge of ascension. Waiting for the sect was to repay the sect's care over the years and this awakening grace. Chapter 984. Everyone had some expectations in their hearts at the beginning, but no one dared to really put their hopes on Yang Chun. Even if Yang Chun could cure the trauma of Yagupa, the confusion brought about by her cultivation deviation was not something that could be treated by any medicinal pill. Not to mention defeating Yagupa, a master of the Deshang stage, it was even more impossible. But now, Yagupa was standing in front of everyone, she was sane, speaking orderly, and acting naturally. There was nothing wrong with her. Could it be that Yang Chun had defeated Yagupa? How was this possible? Everyone who thought of this possibility subconsciously gave the answer that it was impossible. But what was going on with Yagupa's current situation? Someone defeated her? Who was it? Min Huafeng was impatient and asked immediately. I also vaguely remember being defeated, but who beat me and how, I can't remember. Yagupa also had a confused face, and her answer was ambiguous. It seems that this question can only be asked carefully by Yang Chun and the others. For now, let's look at Yagupa's situation first. In any case, the Green Jade Immortal Island had another master at the level of the Great Elder, and their strength was once again stronger. The group of people almost rushed back to the main island of the Green Jade Immortal Island with joy. Yagupa had been muddle-headed these years, and didn't know what happened to her at all. When she heard the narration of others, she also sighed. Especially Guan Zhenyao even used herself as a tool, which made Yagupa even more angry. Despite being in that kind of idiotic state, fighting was still her instinct. How many times had she experienced it? She still vaguely remembered it. In addition to the sparring with several masters in the sect, the extra ones that the sect didn't know were obviously Guan Zhenyao's doing. These contents recalled by Yagupa became the ironclad evidence of Guan Zhenyao's bad intentions. Even if Guan Zhenyao had a mouth all over her body now, she couldn't explain it clearly. The crime was completely confirmed, and no one doubted it anymore. After some greetings, Yagupa finally came to Yang Chun and his wife, thanking Yang Chun for saving her. For Yang Chun and Shi Shanshan, when Yagupa went crazy, they had not yet joined the sect. Now that a senior of such high seniority came to thank her, Shi Shanshan did not dare to be arrogant and hurriedly returned the gesture. Yang Chun, on the other hand, received a solid bow before greeting him according to the etiquette of a junior. To be able to save Yagupa, Yang Chun took great credit, and it was right to receive her salute. No one had any opinion on this. This old woman vaguely remembers that the last time was when I was defeated. Yagupa's trip, first, was to thank the grace of saving her, and second, she wanted to know who the master who defeated her was. This old woman wants to know, who is that master? Not only Yagupa, but even the Lord of Tantai and others who followed behind had a curious expression, waiting for Yang Chun to answer. What kind of person happened to appear when Yang Chun and others were besieged? It's not anyone else, it's you, senior. Yang Chun smiled and began to answer directly, but his answer made everyone confused. I defeated myself? Where did this come from? Myself? Yagupa also had a puzzled expression. Yang Chen's words were really incredible, and she couldn't figure out the key to it even if she thought about it. There was no way, although she vaguely remembered fighting a few times, she couldn't remember the process of the battle at all. Senior didn't have much judgment at the time. A small illusion formation was enough to trap Senior. Yang Chun smiled and explained. Coupled with a strength recoil, Senior completely defeated herself. Yang Chen's words, on the one hand, concealed his own strength, on the other hand, it made Yagupa's psychology a lot better. Being defeated by a few younger generation juniors, no matter what, it was still a loss of face. But being trapped by the illusion formation during her muddle-headedness, and then the strength recoil hurt herself, there was nothing shameful about it. After all, Yagupa was unconscious at that time, and she couldn't distinguish between illusion and reality. Sure enough, as soon as Yang Chun said this, Yagupa's face suddenly improved a lot. The other senior members of the Green Jade, Immortal Island also looked like they suddenly realized something. This statement was carefully considered, and Gong Sunling herself was an array cultivator. Everyone was very clear, and no one doubted anything else. Next, naturally, the Green Jade Immortal Island would not let Yang Chen take out a 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill for nothing. Even if there was a relationship with Shi Shanshan, it was impossible to accept Yang Chen's gift for no reason. Therefore, after several excuses, Yang Chen reluctantly accepted a 6th-grade fire seed as a reward, and both sides were happy. For the Green Jade Immortal Island, the recovery of Yagupa meant that there was another great elder of the Deshang stage who was about to ascend, and her strength had skyrocketed. Moreover, it was an extra one out of thin air. In the past, Yagupa even had to drag a few people to take care of her. When it came to a real battle, it was useless. As long as the opponent was like Yang Chen and the others, an illusion formation could take care of her. No one doubted Yang Chen's alchemy and medical skills anymore. There were even a few elders who asked Yang Chen to help refine a batch of resident appearance pill through Shi Shanshan. They were willing to provide enough medicinal materials and remuneration. For such a request, Yang Chen reluctantly agreed to it for the sake of Shi Shanshan's face. He himself also used this method to increase the status of Sher Shanshan in the eyes of the high-level members of the Green Jade, Immortal Island. Not to mention her powerful combat power and excellent cultivation aptitude, she could also let Yang Chen refine the medicinal pill. The sect couldn't help but attach importance to her. Refining the appearance pill, and it was still the simple appearance pill of the Nine Heavens Dark Maiden. For Yang Chen, it was not too difficult. With a sufficient supply of medicinal ingredients, it took less than 3 months to produce a batch of more than 30 pills, which far exceeded the number of medicinal ingredients provided by the elders who had requested and provided them. However, these medicinal materials were all thousands of years, and the appearance pill could only last for 100 years. No woman would dislike her youthful and beautiful appearance, and naturally, no woman would dislike the appearance pill. The elders who obtained the age-halting pill all treated it as a treasure and kept it properly. For Yang Chen, they were even more grateful. After settling Yagupa, settling Guan Zhenyao's affairs, and curing the appearance pill for the elders, Yang Chen and others set out on the road again. This time, they were not going to the Demon Continent immediately, but went straight to the South China Sea, to the Sea of No Return, and stored the immortal body obtained from the secret plane in the empty Dragon Palace. Yang Chen's split spiritual sense seed has been preserved, and this immortal body was Yang Chen's last reliance. Chapter 985. It's not that Yang Chen doesn't want to use the immortal body to cultivate, it's just that the three purities' secret art is like this. The first split of the spiritual awareness is just a split of a seed of spiritual awareness, which is a chance to recover after the death of the main body. However, this seed of spiritual awareness can't be cultivated when the main body exists. For Yang Chen, he can only watch his own seed of spiritual awareness attached to the immortal body, drooling in vain on the immortal body that has experienced the great Luo heavenly tribulation, and he can never cultivate. It can't be helped that this is a huge temptation. If Yang Chen can be ruthless and start over by himself, with the help of the immortal body, he may be able to raise his cultivation base to a jaw-dropping realm in a short period of time. However, in that case, is it still himself? No one will commit suicide in exchange for a better cultivation opportunity. Even Yang Chen can't make this determination. Not to mention that his current body is a full-value acquired spirit root of all attributes, but he has not experienced a higher tribulation. His future achievements will not be worse than that of the immortal body with a single attribute. Rushing to the Sea of No Return, Yang Chen didn't want others to know. He just took his 4 lovely wives and went directly through the bottom of the sea. With the treasure of the shuttle plus the sea jasper, he was not afraid of being discovered by others. At the periphery of the Sea of No Return, Yang Chen put down the 4 women. There is no way. The interior of the Sea of No Return is dangerous. Without the 5-element hook of the Dragon Clan, they can't go down at all. And the 5-element hook, at present, only Yang Chen can use it. The last time Wan Qian's 5 female apprentices were directly thrown out of the medicine garden was still vivid in his mind, and Yang Chen was not willing to let his wives take risk. With Gong Suanling's geographical map of the mountains and rivers, Yang Chen let them wander around the periphery of the Sea of No Return was also very relieved. The sea beasts here were extremely fierce, and it was a good place to cultivate their fighting consciousness. Yang Chen alone, once again, entered the interior of the Sea of No Return. This time, Xiao Tian was also very awake, and he was very excited to revisit the old place. Arriving at the original location of the Dragon Palace, Yang Chen suddenly released the Dragon Palace before he placed the immortal body there. Last time, Yang Chen controlled the Dragon Palace to integrate the Dragon Clan treasure house after Xiao Tian swallowed the dragon bead, but it was obvious that the integration was definitely not as thorough as Xiao Tian's personal operation. This time, Yang Chen released the Dragon Palace and let Xiao Tian personally control it and completely integrate the two. The immortal body and the 7 treasures glazed box were placed in the 10th water spiritual liquid by Yang Chen. Since the last time Yang Chen collected it, it had slowly accumulated some more, but it was only a thin layer. An eternal spring nourishing formation was placed here, which could be used to nourish the immortal body with the help of the 10th water spiritual liquid. After it was temporarily settled, waiting for the process of Shao Tian controlling the Dragon Palace to integrate the treasure house, Yang Chen was not idle and once again made a spiritual awareness contact with Li Liheng in Taishanmen. During this period of time, every year or so, Yang Chen would contact Li Liheng once and it had almost become a fixed rule. However, Li Liheng's consumption of spirit congealing pills was getting more and more. A single contact had already used about 10 pills. At this rate, in a maximum of 10 years, the spirit congealing pills that Yang Chen refined would be consumed. The time of each contact was long and short, but almost every time it was to instruct Li Liheng and other Taishanmen on some cultivation. Judging from Li Liheng's increasingly proud performance, he has gained an absolute position in Taishanmen. This was a good thing, and Yang Chen was happy to facilitate it. Letting a guy without talent and virtue ascend to the high position of Taishanmen was also the first step of the plan. But today, Yang Chen intended to make Taishanmen depressed. When I was chatting with a predecessor of another sect recently, the predecessor occasionally said that he still remembered that one of his predecessors left a secret plane in the mortal world. Senior Lu Fengzi said to Li Liheng, "You write down the method to open the secret plane and go and get those things." Li Liheng was overjoyed. A secret plane left by a predecessor of the spiritual world. Needless to say, it was full of good things. Needless to say, just the medicinal materials could be boiled into peerless treasures. He didn't dare to leave a word. Li Liheng firmly remembered the instructions of Senior Lu Fengzi and repeated it to Senior Lu Fengzi. After there were no more problems, Senior Lu Fengzi was relieved. In this secret plane there are many dangers. The predecessor who left is not a good man or woman. You have to be careful, otherwise the consequences will be unimaginable. Senior Lu Fengzi seemed to be still worried and warned again. Of course, Li Liheng promised that he would be careful. After spending 10 spirit congealing pills, he ended the contact with Senior Lu Fengzi. When the key to the ancient secret plane of Taishanmen broke out last time, Li Liheng was not present, so he was not very clear about it. With his character, these things that had nothing to do with him would not pay much attention to them afterward. And at that time, he was suffering from the pain of fainting for no reason. How could he care about the secret plane? This time, he got an ancient secret plane, and he was excited. Under the gaze of the core senior members of the Greatest Heavens sect, who were waiting anxiously, Li Liheng quickly explained the process of this exchange. Hearing that there was an ancient secret plane, everyone was excited for a while. But when Li Liheng excitedly told the news of the ancient secret plane, he thought he could see the excited expressions of the sect master and elders, but to his surprise, he only saw frustration. What kind of expression was this? Li Liheng looked at the elders with some puzzlement. It was still sect master Li who knew Li Liheng. Seeing his puzzled appearance, he reminded him, "This secret plane is the secret plane that made us lose a few Deshang stage elders." The excitement instantly turned into consternation. Li Liheng looked at the crowd dumbfounded, and his mind was confused. Senior Lu Fengzi said that the secret plane left by the predecessor of the predecessor, how could it become a disaster? Did Senior Lu Fengzi say to be careful? Sect Master Li asked in a low voice, for Lu Fengzi, who he had never met and could not meet, he vaguely had a trace of doubt. What did it mean to take out a secret plane that almost everyone knew? The predecessor told me to be careful. That predecessor is not a good man or a good woman. Li Liheng hurriedly said the advice of Senior Lu Fengzi. But even if he thought about it, he couldn't understand how the secret plane passed down by the predecessor of the spiritual world became a secret plane that has been excavated? Wait and see the next contact. Sect Masterly sighed. He didn't know what kind of thoughts he had in his mind. Chapter 986. After playing with the Taishaman a little, Yang Chun settled his avatar Immortal body, and then went to the location of the Dragon Palace to check the situation of the Dragon Palace's integration with the treasure house. Last time, Yang Chun had completed the initial integration. This time, Xiao Tian personally controlled it. It was even easier. In less than a month, the integration was completely completed, and it was still the deepest level of integration. For more than a month, the women were a little anxious. Fortunately, Gong Sunling also experienced such waiting last time, knowing that the inside of the Sea of No Return was extremely dangerous, so after explaining to the other 3 women, everyone joined hands to deal with those sea beasts to practice. It didn't seem too boring. Yang Chun came out of the Sea of No Return. They haven't seen him for more than a month, but when the women looked at Yang Chun, they clearly saw a different aura from before from him. It was a kind of pleasant self-confidence. It was absolutely impossible to see it if it was not the close people around Yang Chun. That kind of self-confidence, even beyond life and death, there was no feeling of fear anymore. It could be understood that when a person has an immortal body as his own avatar, and once the main body dies, the avatar will wake up again, and with almost all his memories, no one would be afraid of death. This state of not being afraid of death would naturally affect the state of mind of the main body, turning it into a kind of fearless thought. Was there a better way to improve the cultivation base than this? How many years has it been since everyone entered the Yuanying stage, when most people were consolidating their realm? Yang Chen seems to have begun to hit the peak of the early Yuanying stage. Everyone has been away from the sect for many years, and they all have to go back. Shi Shanshan just went back not long ago, but Sun Qingxue has never returned to the Blue Cloud sect. Sun Qingxue was going back to her mother's home, so she had to bring some gifts back. Now the primary appearance pill refined by Yang Chen has become the most sought-after product. When he was in the Green Jade Immortal Island last time, he refined some more, just so that Sun Qingxue could take it back as a gift. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue seemed to be advancing and retreating together. The 2 women did not want to return to Chunyang Palace at this time. They just made an appointment with Yang Chun to meet again and then rushed to Blue Cloud sect together. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling naturally followed Yang Chun back to Chunyang Palace. Returning to the sect, in addition to communicating with the palace master and the elders, Yang Chun also had another purpose, which was to wait for the Taishaman to extend the bamboo pole again. More than half of the spirit congealing pills have been consumed, and the rest is definitely not enough for Li Liheng to persist for 50 years. This point was very clear to the high-level members of Taishaman, but there was no way. The pill recipe in his hand has not only been verified by the masters of the medicinal hall, but even the spirit congealing pill recipe left by Senior Lu Fengzi was exactly the same. There was no problem with the pill recipe, but there was no alchemist. This made the Taishaman depressed to the extreme. In desperation, they could only come to Yang Chen again. Mao Qi, who vowed to never see Yang Chen again, has been waiting in Taishaman for a full 5 years. He couldn't help but come. Li Liheng's communication with Senior Lu Fengzi over the years has brought many benefits to the sect. Mao Qi was very clear from beginning to end, and even his own cultivation base had a small improvement. All of these were based on Li Liheng's normal cultivation of the spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method, and the foundation of Li Liheng's normal cultivation was the spirit congealing pill. Without the spirit congealing pill, there was nothing. There was no Li Liheng, no Lu Fengzi, no future guidance from the seniors. Even if he had made an oath, he had to break the oath at this time. As Sect Masterly asked at that time, did he make an oath with his heart demon? Since it wasn't, then it must be Mao Qi, Hall Master Mao, who asked the Taishaman to deal with Yang Chen the most times and was most familiar with Yang Chen. Why are you here again? This was the first sentence that Yang Chen blurted out when he saw Hall Master Mao. His face was full of impatience and a look of surprise. Mao Qi's face turned black directly. What do you mean again? Do you think I want to come? But his face only turned black for a moment, and he returned to normal immediately. Now the Taishaman needed Yang Chen's help. It was not the time to fall out with Yang Chen. Moreover, Yang Chen didn't say much, did he? What medicinal pill are you refining this time? In front of Mao Qi, Yang Chen rarely did not have to be as polite as in front of other outsiders. He sat down and sat opposite Mao Qi. He reached out and grabbed the teapot to pour tea for Mao Qi while asking, "Spirit congealing pill." Mao Qi was also not polite to Yang Chen. He reached out and grabbed the teacup and took a big sip, then lazily spat out 3 words and said helplessly, "Spirit congealing pill?" Yang Chen had a puzzled look on his face. He stared at Mao Qi and even asked in an incredible tone, "Senior Mao, you have nothing to do. Are you throwing the spirit congealing pill for fun? Or Taishamen have too many good things and you have to rush to give them to me? I'm embarrassed." Mao Qi almost jumped up in anger. "What do you mean, throwing the spirit congealing pill for fun? Do you think I want to come here to find you?" How could Mao Qi not hear the teasing tone in Yang Chen's words? Moreover, Yang Chen did not hide it. He clearly told Mao Qi that he was extorting him several times before. Why did he come to the door to let him knock now? Now he was embarrassed to knock. "I can't help it, more than one person needs it." Mao Qi couldn't get angry yet. He could only forcibly suppress his anger and calmly explained, "Give me a price." Anyway, Mao Qi and Yang Chen have dealt with each other more than once or twice. There is not so much greeting between the two. Straightforward is the style of the two people to discuss business. How much? Yang Chen did not struggle with why the Taishaman wanted so many spirit congealing pills, nor did he directly offer a price, but asked a number. If he didn't figure out the number, how could he speak? Last time, the Taishaman learned a lesson. They were afraid that the spirit congealing pill for 50 years was not enough. They deliberately asked Yang Chen to refine almost 5% more as a reserve. But they didn't expect that the consumption would be so high. This time, in addition to having enough to treat the disease, they also need a large number of extra pills. 50 years have passed, almost half of it is now gone, and there are only a few left. This time, the Taishaman decided to get enough at one time, so as not to bother Yang Chen in the future. 5,000. Mao Qi gritted his teeth and said this number. His heart couldn't help but tremble, and there was a faint pain. This number was enough for Yang Chen to offer a price that would make the Taishaman speechless. When he thought that the resources that could have been enjoyed by the Taishaman disciples were now handed over to the alchemist master in front of him, Mao Qi couldn't help but feel distressed. Chapter 987. 5,000. Even Yang Chen couldn't help but be stunned. With such a large number, even if Yang Chen refined it himself, it would take a few years. Taishaman really put in a lot of money this time. Were they not afraid of being knocked down by him? He didn't expect Taishaman to have such great courage. In Yang Chen's mind, they would only give enough medicinal pills to treat Li Liheng. He didn't expect that they would be so generous. This was better. First, it would save him from having to come to the door every once in a while to accumulate hatred. Second, Yang Chen didn't want to spend more time on spirit congealing pills. It was best to solve it at once. What else would I like? Yang Chen didn't directly offer a price, but asked. Mao Qi rolled his eyes and showed an expression of, "I knew it," on his face. It seemed that the elder of the Foreign Affairs Hall of Taishaman would only show such a helpless expression in front of Yang Chen. Everything that happened here, if it was spread outside, it was not known how many people would be shocked. The notes of the best alchemy masters in Taishaman in the past 10,000 years, is it enough? Mao Qi said while observing Yang Chen's reaction. Mao Qi and other high-level officials of Taishaman carefully studied Yang Chen and found that in addition to fire seeds, he only wanted medicinal materials and rarely wanted anything else. Even if he wanted it, It would be given to others, not for his own use. In this way, Yang Chen liked to study the way of alchemy, so they could only cater to his liking. Within 10,000 years? Yang Chen closed his eyes and began to ponder. The experience of these alchemy masters was indeed coveted. Even if Taishimen was not a specialized alchemy sect, the notes of the masters accumulated for 10,000 years were also very rare and good things for him. 1,000. After thinking for a while, Yang Chen finally gave a number. These notes could be exchanged for 1,000 spirit congealing pills. Hearing the number reported by Yang Chen, Mao Qi's heart settled down for a while. Sure enough, what Yang Chen loved was the Tao of alchemy and exploring the profoundness of alchemy. The things he had been given to him previously were truly a waste. If he had known earlier, he would have used these alchemy notes that could be copied by the jade slip to exchange for it. How many 7th-grade fire seeds and more than 100,000 years old spirit medicines could be saved? In addition to the 2 pill scriptures passed down from the spiritual realm. Mao Qi and Yang Chen were like 2 profiteers, gradually increasing their bargaining chip. Who are you trying to fool? Yang Chen's face was full of disdain. Suddenly, his expression changed as if he was looking at an old swindler. Passed down from the spiritual realm? Why don't you say it's from the immortal world? Who knows, I might be able to exchange for more. As soon as Yang Chen's pretentious performance came out, Mao Qi immediately felt a sense of balance in his heart. A small sect was a small sect. The means and consumption of some big sects were simply unimaginable. In the eyes of Yang Chen, the things passed down from the spiritual realm and the immortal world were impossible, but in the eyes of Taishimen, it was not so mysterious. Young man, sometimes what you don't understand doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Mao Qi's heart was as comfortable as drinking a large glass of ice water in the summer. He slowly picked up the teacup and took a sip. Finally, there was a little pride of a big sect. It was rare to have an opportunity to put on the appearance of a senior in front of Yang Chen. Mao Qi was simply happy on his face and cool in his heart. So what if he was a 5th-grade alchemist master? Wasn't he from a small family? He didn't even know the means of some big sect? The things passed down from the spiritual realm and the immortal world are not impossible, Mao Qi said slowly. He glanced at Yang Chen's slightly open mouth and a little surprised expression again, and his heart was filled with uncontrollable happiness. This was simply the most comfortable meeting with Yang Chen for so many times, which made Mao Qi somewhat happy. How good would it be if every meeting was like this? How could Mao Qi be depressed to the point of swearing not to see Yang Chen again? It was a rare enjoyment. Mao Qi definitely had to put on airs and give Yang Chen a good lesson. It's not a big deal. It's just that they have to pay the price of several masters' thousands of years of cultivation. Mao Qi tried to use the most understated expression and tone to say this matter, while not forgetting to enjoy the incredible expression on Yang Chen's face after hearing it. The price of thousands of years of cultivation? Yang Chen's performance at the moment was as if he had heard such an outrageous thing for the first time. What he had always thought was correct fell apart in front of him, as if the whole world had collapsed. He asked foolishly, "Is there really something passed down?" Such a performance was too normal. The common sense that he had heard since he was a child had been subverted. No one could suddenly accept it. Moreover, for a small sect, it was simply unimaginable for the spiritual realm and the immortal world to pay such a price to pass down something. Yang Chen didn't seem to doubt that Mao Qi would lie to him. Of course, at this moment, when Mao Qi needed help from Yang Chen, if he still lied to Yang Chen, it was no less than digging a hole for himself. In this case, it meant that what Mao Qi said was true. There was really such a thing. Of course. At the moment, Mao Qi's sense of superiority as a big sect couldn't be suppressed. He seemed to be thinking about whether he could take the opportunity to recruit Yang Chen. However, he also understood the priorities of the matter. First, he had to do the things at hand and then talk about the extra. 2 Pill Scriptures of the Spiritual Realm. After the initial surprise, Yang Chen began to ponder again. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, 2 Pill Scriptures of the Spiritual Realm for 1,500 pills. To be honest, Yang Chen's previous life was only a 6th-grade alchemist master. There were many talented high-level alchemist masters who even reached this level in the spiritual realm. Exchanging so many spirit-congealing pills with the pill scriptures of a high-level alchemist master in Taishanmen, Yang Chen would definitely earn a lot. What if I add a pill scripture handed down from the immortal world? Mao Qi's head was almost raised to the sky, and his voice was high above, as if a few words were smashed down from the sky. He could use such an attitude in front of Yang Chen. Mao Qi didn't even dare to think about it before he came. If he had known that Yang Chen liked such things, he would have used these to trade in the first few times. He could save good things and he could enjoy this feeling of being bossy. However, it's not too late to know now. He will know how to deal with Yang Chen in the future. Hearing the pill scripture handed down from the immortal world, Yang Chen's breathing was already a lot heavier. He was wheezing like a small bellows and his eyes were a little red. How about the remaining 2,500? This time, it was Yang Chen's turn to ask carefully, waiting for Mao Qi to agree. Mao Qi was almost excited to shed tears. Heaven, earth, finally, there was Yang Chen who had to wait for his own decision. Yang Chen, you also have this day? Chapter 988. Not enough. Mao Qi began to shake his head directly. It was not easy to get hold of Yang Chen's pulse. If he didn't make a good profit, how could Mao Qi, the master of the Foreign Affairs Hall, show his skill? Moreover, the grievances suffered in the past, how could he get it back with interest today? Not enough. Yang Chen's face recovered a little, and it didn't look like the kind of shock before. But he was still a little surprised by Mao Qi's words and couldn't help but ask. Yes, not enough. Mao Qi deliberately repeated it, and also emphasized the word not enough. After a pause, he continued, plus 30-second grade questioning inner heart pills, maybe it's almost enough. This time it was Yang Chen's turn to start considering. Mao Qi was planning to get back all the previous losses at once. Of course, he wanted to appreciate Yang Chen's embarrassed expression. He did not urge him. He sat there as steady as Mount Tai and slowly sipped tea. His mind was full of unspeakable thoughts. Little did he know, Yang Chen almost burst his belly laughing at the moment. The affectation and performance just now really made Mao Qi believe it. It was easy to let the Taishanmen no longer suspect that he had done something in the spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method. Imagine a guy who didn't even know that his consciousness clone was in the lower realm. How could he know such a secret thing? As for the pill scripture, Yang Chen really needed it. But to let Yang Chen accept Mao Qi's new price tag, it was absolutely impossible. 5,000 spirit-congealing pills was the limit. Questioning inner heart pill? Don't even think about it. Forget it, the price tag is too high. This junior doesn't need the pill scripture of the immortal world. After waiting for Mao Qi to be proud for a while, Yang Chen hesitated for a long time and made up his mind. He gave an unexpected answer to Mao Qi anyway. This junior is only a 5th-grade alchemist master. If there really is the pill scripture of the immortal world, this junior can't use it, so I don't want it. Mao Qi's complacency directly drilled back into his body as he sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He almost burped and passed out. After saying so much and putting out a great temptation, it seemed that Yang Chen was about to fall into the trap. Suddenly, Yang Chen took drastic measures and quit. Mao Qi fell into a state of sluggishness. The pill scripture of the spiritual world was good, and the pill scripture of the immortal world was better, but these were only the resources that the Taishanmen had, not the spirit-congealing pills that they urgently needed. Which of the experts in Taishanmen's medicine hall had not read these pill scriptures? But in their own words, the higher the level of the pill scripture, the more difficult it was to understand. Perhaps it was because their realms were not high enough. They simply could not understand the method described in the pill scripture. If it was said that it was understandable to multitask and control multiple types of flames for alchemy, then using several different types of true water to form a fire attribute array for alchemy was simply unheard of. Using water as fire for alchemy, what kind of joke was this? But this pill scripture was obviously not a fake from other places, but the Taishamen did not know how many times they had spent their consciousness clones in the lower realm, so that the consciousness of those clones in the lower realm could piece together the memories little by little. It was absolutely impossible to be fake. This time, the Taishamen also had a good plan. Didn't Yang Chen like these things? Then they would give him a pill scripture that could not be used at all to hang his appetite, in exchange for the medicinal pills that they needed. Maybe Yang Chen would study these until he was possessed by the devil, and they could destroy Yang Chen's future quietly. It was like a primary school student who had just learned that 0 was the smallest number, and suddenly gave him a high school mathematics textbook to study and interpret imaginary numbers. He didn't even know negative numbers, let alone what was after the square root of a negative number. Maybe because there was no step-by-step progress, it would make him confused. This was why it was necessary to take 5,000 spirit congealing pills at a time. There were enough medicinal pills, even if it was used 10 a year, it would be enough for 500 years. 500 years was enough for Li Liheng's spiritual awareness to cultivate to a certain level, and there was no need for spirit congealing pills. And Yang Chen must be destroyed. The plan was good, but they didn't expect this change, at least Mao Qi didn't expect it. After he finished his previous words, he thought that Yang Chen had been fascinated by the pill scripture handed down from the immortal world and would desperately take it, but he didn't expect Yang Chen to be so realistic. If he couldn't use it, he wouldn't consider it for the time being, and he wouldn't buy it at a high price. In this way, the Taishaman's plan was in vain. It doesn't matter, the problem is that the number of spirit congealing pills is not enough, which is a big problem. Looking at the speed of Li Liheng's current use, it seems that he is getting more and more. On average, he uses 10 pills for a cross-border contact, and there is a trend of more and more. More than 2,000 pills are not enough to make the Taishaman completely relieved. Knowing that his greed had ruined the big thing, Mao Qi immediately changed his mind and said, "Then the questioning inner heart pills will be reduced by half. How about 15 second-grade questioning inner heart pills?" Anyway, it was not the first time to bargain. Mao Qi was very familiar with this. It was rare for him to take the initiative again, so he had to get more things from Yang Chen's hands. Yang Chen shook his head directly. He didn't want to give more things at all. These pill scriptures, Yang Chen wanted them very much, but he would not exchange them with additional questioning inner heart pills. He wanted the Taishaman to have the pill recipe, but there was no questioning inner heart pills available. 10. Mao Qi's face became ugly again. When negotiating with Yang Chen on the price, it seemed that Mao Qi did not have the upper hand once. Every time it was how much Yang Chen said, Mao Qi was determined to change this situation this time. Still shaking his head, Yang Chen didn't even want to say anything more. This attitude made Mao Qi's heart sink, but he immediately warned himself that the purpose of this trip was to get the spirit congealing pill, and the additional questioning inner heart pill. If he couldn't get it, then he couldn't get it. He also blamed himself for being greedy, looking at Yang Chen's tempted. He wanted to add the questioning inner heart pill. This time, the chicken and eggs were broken, and he didn't even get enough spirit congealing pills. If he really went back like this, the sect master would never give him a good face. "Well, I'm afraid of you." Mao Qi immediately made a generous appearance of a senior, patted his head, and made a decision directly, "Do as you say." After saying this, Mao Qi saw a playful smile on Yang Chen's face, and his heart was suddenly shocked. He had seen Yang Chen's method of asking for an exorbitant price many times. If he increased it again this time, it would not be a good thing. Thinking of this, Mao Qi didn't care about his identity, and hurriedly cried, "You can't increase the price. This price is what you said yourself, you won't go back on your words, right?" Looking at Mao Qi being so nervous, Yang Chen also gave up the plan to increase the price and kill more Taishanmen. Anyway, 2 pill scriptures of the spiritual world and 1 pill scripture of the immortal world, for Yang Chen, it was already an absolute profit. This was the experience of the Taishanmen's alchemy master in the immortal world. Thinking about it was exciting. Chapter 989. Compared with the previous harvests, others may feel that Yang Chen had lost a lot this time. Originally, hundreds of spirit congealing pills could be exchanged for various 6th grade fire seeds, 6th Earth True Secret Art, 6th Earth True Essence, and the like. The last time he even got hundreds of thousands of years of spirit medicine and medicine garden. This time there were only some experience and pill scriptures, it was really not comparable. But for Yang Chen, these things were more rare than the previous medicinal materials and fire seed. These experiences and insights, in any sect, were carefully collected as heirlooms. Without a certain identity in the sect, without making enough contributions, don't even think about touching them. As for the pill scriptures of the spiritual world and the immortal world, it was even rarer. Except for some pill recipes such as the questioning inner heart pill and spirit congealing pill that have been made public, other medicinal pills were simply kept secret. Even people who were not in the sect did not know the names of some medicinal pills. It was conceivable how precious these pill scriptures were. Although Yang Chen now has a elderly lord pill scripture and an unknown immortals, Yundan scripture, most of the elderly lord pill scripture only talked about refining techniques, and the Yundan scripture only recorded the refining techniques of a dozen kinds of medicinal pills, which could not meet the needs of Yang Chen, who wanted to become an alchemy master in the future. Taishanmen took the initiative to tempt him with the pill scriptures of the spiritual world and the immortal world this time. That was because they still couldn't understand the preciousness of these pill scriptures. Otherwise, they would not be so prodigal as to give away the pill scripture that the elders of their sect had spent a lot of effort on. Mao Qi was definitely prepared this time. After negotiating the price with Yang Chen, he immediately took out dozens of jade slips and handed them to Yang Chen. This was Yang Chen's usual habit: pay the money first, and then take the medicine. After several previous transactions, Taishanmen were quite satisfied with the credibility of Yang Chen. So they didn't care about taking out the reward first and let Mao Qi bring it directly, saving them from running back and forth and wasting time. After a rough scan with his spiritual awareness, he basically determined that these things were true. Moreover, Yang Chen was not afraid that the content inside was fake. With Yang Chen's ability, he would definitely be able to find the problem after careful analysis. Once Yang Chen revealed that the Taishanmen had used fake items to trade with Yang Chen, then the Taishanmen's reputation would suffer another blow, and the losses would outweigh the gains. Yang Chen did not neglect and directly greeted the master of the palace. After talking to his 2 wives, he plunged into the alchemy room and began to refine the medicinal pills. The spirit congealing pill is not difficult for Yang Chen. Even if she was distracted for a few times, it was enough for her to divide another thought to absorb and integrate the 4th grade fire seed. After so many years of absorption, all the 3rd grade fire seeds on Yang Chen's body have been integrated into the yin-yang heaven burning fire, and several 4th grade fire seeds have also been integrated, and the power is steadily improving. However, for Yang Chen, the 5th grade fire seed was basically laying the foundation and gradually perfecting the embryonic form of the yin-yang heaven burning fire. Only when he began to absorb the 5th grade fire seed was it the real time to shine. The current yin-yang heaven burning fire can already simulate any kind of fire seed below the 4th grade. Except for the power of ordinary fire seeds that could not be compared at all, no one can see any flaws. Up to now, everyone, including the people around Yang Chen, basically thought that Yang Chen's fire seed was the earth core fire. As a fire cultivator, for a long time, Yang Chen has not used his own flame to fight against the enemy. This time, after refining the spirit-congealing pill for the Taishanman, when he arrived at the demon continent, Yang Chen would make a profit anyway. This time, it took Yang Chen 3 years to complete a total of 5,000 spirit-congealing pills. When he received the spirit-congealing pills for inspection, even Mao Qi was stunned for a moment. 5,000 spirit-congealing pills, all of them were second-grade spirit-congealing pills. At this time, even Mao Qi couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Yang Chen's move could be said to be very kind. It must be known that what the Taishanman asked for was the first-grade spirit-congealing pill. This time and the last time, they basically gave the second-grade medicinal pill, and the quality was absolutely impeccable. Yang Chen had been refining for 3 years, and Mao Qi waited in Chunyang Palace for 3 years. It was conceivable that the importance of the spirit-congealing pill was attached. But with this batch of medicinal pills, even if Mao Qi wanted to nitpick, he couldn't pick out a little bit. This old man has to say that although your price is high, the medicinal pills you give are excellent. Mao Qi couldn't help but sigh, which was a compliment to Yang Chen. Then he didn't say anything more and left directly. After greeting the head of the palace, he quickly rushed back to Taishanman. During the refining of the medicinal pills, Yang Chen also contacted Li Liheng several times with his spiritual awareness. Each time it was some small instructions, and it did not cause too much change. Basically, there were no more mundane things to do in the short term. After Yang Chen finally talked with the head of the palace in detail, he took Gao Yu and Gong Sunling on the road to the demon continent. Before going, he must go to the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect to pick up Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. There was no doubt about this. However, after the head of the palace and a group of high-level officials knew Yang Chen's destination, they were somewhat reluctant to let him take the risk. Everyone had heard of the demon continent, but no one had been there. They only knew that it was a place where cultivators of various races gathered, and killing was rampant, but no one knew what the specific situation was. Nevertheless, the dangers were clear. Although the territories of the monster race and demon sects were dangerous, compared with the demon continent, those two places were simply a peaceful paradise. Fortunately, Ho Yun was not there. He was presiding over the banyan tree Immortal's cave in the 10,000 trees forest. Otherwise, when he heard the news, he would definitely follow Yang Chen. That place full of killing was Ho Yun's favorite environment. In his previous life, Yang Chen had never been to the demon continent. Across the vast sea of millions of miles, even the shuttle had to fly on the sea for almost 10 years. In addition, there were all kinds of fierce sea beasts in the sea. Ordinary masters couldn't even make a trip there. This was by no means a trivial matter. At that time, Yang Chen took Luo Yuan, who was in the Deshang stage, and plunged into the territory of Lan Ning, who was about to ascend. If it weren't for the Sea Jasper Cup, he would have been directly obliterated. There was no other possibility. Luo Yuan, who was in the Deshang stage, was like this. It could be imagined that crossing the entire sea was almost like walking through the Hall of Hell. Even the two major sects were quite critical of Yang Chen's decision to take their talented disciples to such a dangerous place to gain experience. But now Yang Chen was the husband of the two women. No matter how big the sect was, it seemed that they couldn't manage the family affairs of the Yang family. In the end, they could only arm the two women in their respective sect before they were allowed to travel. After picking up the two women from their respective sect, Yang Chen's family finally embarked on the journey to the demon continent. Chapter 990. Their destination is the demon continent? When Yang Chen's family of 5 set off, many people knew their destination, and many people asked in surprise. Yang Chen's destination was not concealed. Since he was going to the demon continent, a place where there was constant killing, he was naturally not afraid of adding some open spears and hidden arrows. The name of the demon continent was not a strange place among the major Dao sects. On the contrary, several major sects had disciples go there almost every once in a while. However, the masters of the major sect who went to the demon continent would never be talented disciples like the cold plum fairy and the dancing snow fairy, but a group of disciples whose qualifications were not outstanding, and who did not have much hope in the sect. Some had violated the sect rules or other circumstances. Anyway, they were basically disciples who had no chance in the sect. If these disciples stayed in the sect all the time, they were doomed to tragedy. But going to the demon continent was different. As long as they could survive the ubiquitous fighting, they could basically become a master. In this case, whether they returned to the sect or ventured alone, their future prospects would be very different. The small sect also had a similar situation, but unless they couldn't mix in the Tao sects, who would be willing to risk their lives to go to the demon continent? Even Yang Chun had never been there in his previous life. First, he didn't have the ability, and second, he didn't have the determination to stay alive to avenge his master. Generally speaking, few disciples of the Tao sects could come back alive, and occasionally a few would come back, but it was also rare. In short, there were many people who had heard of it, but few people who had been there. Young master, this is a great opportunity. He heard that Yang Chun went to the demon continent, and before that, Hall Master Mao Chi had already got enough spirit congealing pills. Yang Lan lost the opportunity to mention it in front of Li Liheng. The last time he was locked in the deep cold pool for several years, Yang Lan's body was greatly damaged, and it took him many years to recover. However, while he was recuperating, he hated Yang Chun to the bone. He was constantly thinking about taking revenge on Yang Chun. If I kill him, wouldn't there be no one to refine the spirit congealing pill in the future? Li Liheng did not alienate Yang Lan for Yang Lan's sake, but he was not a brainless person. For Yang Lan's provocation, he directly rejected it. Young master, I'm not going to kill him. Yang Lan leaned over to Li Liheng's ear and whispered, Elder who is a dignified elder of the Deshang stage. Will he really do that kind of thing for a few pill recipes? What do you mean? Li Liheng thought about it a little bit. Could it be that Yang Lan was still thinking about something on Yang Chun? Young lord, look, the spirit congealing pills you ate at the beginning are all spirit congealing pills, but the quality is higher, right? Yang Lan saw that Li Liheng began to be interested, and immediately persuaded. But what I got later were all second-grade spirit congealing pills. So what? Li Liheng was stunned, and he felt that this was a bit incredible, but he still asked. Yang Chun will be so kind that he won't refine the simple first-grade spirit congealing pills, and he will deliver them after the second-grade refining? Yang Lan reminded him quietly. You mean? Li Liheng suddenly thought of a possibility, and then became excited. He has a magic weapon that can improve the quality of medicinal pills? I'm afraid it's more than that. Yang Lan smiled in his heart and said with a relaxed tone, when he was in the Yang family village, he didn't know a word. When he came to the Chunyang Palace, it was said that there was no one to guide him, but he could rely on his own cultivation to achieve the Yuanying stage, and also became a fifth-grade alchemist master. Young master, if there is nothing strange in this disciple will never believe it. Yang Lan has been targeting Yang Chun for many years, and naturally, he has collected a lot of information about Yang Chun. Similarly, because of the importance of the fifth-grade alchemist master, Taishaman also found a lot of information, but in the Yang family village they did not know, only Yang Lan knew. He was illiterate in the Yang family village? Li Liheng suddenly grasped the news and asked in a deep voice. This disciple guarantees with his life. Yang Lan saw that Li Liheng was hooked, and hurriedly struck while the iron was hot. While showing his loyalty, he made Li Liheng more interested. Let's go and see the sect master right away. This time, Li Liheng learned to be good. Instead of acting on his own like the last time, he quickly got up and took Yang Lan straight to the courtyard of Sect Masterly. Soon, the two appeared in front of Sect Masterly. After a while, the sect master began to convene several core elders to discuss matters. Is there really such a thing? The elders who heard the news suddenly asked with a heavy face, and everyone couldn't believe the news they heard. An illiterate person could do this when he joined the Chunyang Palace and was suppressed by Chu Heng. It would be strange if there were no problems inside. Not to mention, he couldn't even read the secret books. How could he cultivate? Not to mention knowing the ancient characters and helping Taishanmen interpret the ancient keys. The problem of literacy was easy to solve, but to understand ancient characters, that was a fantasy story. The vastness of the mortal world was almost unimaginable. Don't even think about it. Even the ancient characters of Taishanmen would be lost. The disciples of Chunyang Palace, who were a month away from Taishanmen, could read the ancient characters of Taishanmen in just 100 years. It was simply a joke. Could it be that he got the inheritance of a predecessor? An elder immediately thought of this possibility. I'm afraid it's more than that. The deputy sect master shook his head and said, It's useless to get the inheritance and be illiterate unless he gets all the memories, otherwise it's impossible. Memories? That's impossible. Someone immediately exclaimed. Not because of anything else, but because of other people's memories. Even the great elders of the Peak Deshang stage could not easily get them. No one in this world has ever cultivated in such a way. A group of core elders argued endlessly, all aiming at this possible way, but the conclusion of everyone's argument was the same, that no one could get all the memories of others, even half of them. Otherwise, it would not be so troublesome for the consciousness clone to descend to the lower realm. As long as they find a way to get the memory of the clone, they don't have to wait for him to slowly recall. There is one way, maybe it is possible. Sect Masterly pondered for a long time, and when everyone was almost finished, he opened his mouth and attracted everyone's attention. If there is a master who uses the method of possession to forcibly place his primordial spirit in a magic weapon that nourishes the primordial spirit, it is also a very possible method. Sect Master Li finally said his guess. Chapter 991. Boom! Listening to Sect Master Li's judgment, everyone suddenly burst into discussion. It had to be said that Sect Master Li's guess was really reasonable. The method of depriving others of their memory was not feasible, but this method was absolutely possible. The more they discussed, the more excited everyone became, especially after a few refining masters analyzed the possibility of this method. It was even more fascinating. If the sect master's guess was correct, then the reason why Yangchen was so outstanding might be because of such a magic weapon. In terms of cultivation, it was definitely an ancient senior master, otherwise it was impossible for a guy with mediocre aptitude to have such a cultivation speed. As for alchemy, it was even more so. Could a master of the Jedan stage casually become a 5th-grade alchemist master? If there was no one who didn't know how strong the guy was behind it, it was simply impossible. Being able to recognize the ancient characters showed that the primordial spirit in this magic weapon was already a master of tens of thousands of years ago. For such a long time, the primordial spirit stayed in the magic weapon that could nourish the spiritual awareness, and the strength of the spiritual awareness was simply certain. If that was the case, then it was only natural for him to be multitasking. In this way, whether it was the spirit congealing pill or the questioning inner heart pill, they were all based on the primordial spirit of this magic weapon. This also explained why Hu Qianni, as a master of the Deshang stage, would bully Yang Chen. Hu Qianni did conceal the news from the Taishanmen. Now that he was imprisoned in Chunyang Palace, it was impossible to ask him for confirmation. However, this guess has been recognized by everyone as the answer closest to the truth, otherwise all the magical things that happened to Yang Chen could not be explained. Before, everyone had been wondering how Yang Chen became a 5th-grade alchemist master, and now there was almost a perfect explanation. And just at this time, Yang Chen actually took his 4 wives to the demon continent. As long as they left the territory of the Dao sects, they would not be able to call for help. With such a good opportunity, did they still need to hesitate? It's a matter of great importance. Let Great Elder Lu take 10 late Yuanying stage masters to catch up with Yang Chen's family and bring the things back. Of course, Sect Master Li was not a good person. He immediately made a decision and directly sent a great elder to find trouble with Yang Chen. Just when a certain core elder promised to leave to make arrangements, Sect Master Li suddenly paused and said, "Yang Chen's wife named Gao Yu, don't kill her, bring her back to me. She has a fire attribute spirit root and cultivates a water attribute cultivation method. I suspect that she has some secrets, maybe she is a good furnace for me." "Yes, Sect Master." The elder paused and immediately agreed. Senior Lu Fengzi had pointed out that the Sect Master's cultivation base was stuck, and he needed a cauldron with full value of water attribute spiritual root to break through. Now it seemed that the Sect Master was moved by Gao Yu. This was not a big deal. The Sect Master of the Greatest Heavens sect needed a cauldron, wasn't it a matter of a word? How many people wanted to be the Sect Master's cauldron, but they still couldn't do it, not to mention that she was Yang Chen's woman. How could the elders fight against the Sect Master on this matter? This matter was discovered by Yang Lan. It is a great achievement. The Sect Master's reward and punishment were clear. For Yang Lan's role here, it was also affirmed. The sect's secret pavilion allows him to go in and choose a magic weapon as a reward. When the Sect Master spoke, Yang Lan was excited almost instantly. After suffering in Taishaman for so many days, he finally had the chance to make a name for himself. Yang Lan had secretly vowed in his heart that as long as he got the magic weapon of the secret pavilion, he would practice diligently, and one day he would trample on Yang Chen. Of course, the premise was that Yang Chen could still live until then. Yang Chen did not know that because of Yang Lan, the Sect Master of Taishaman still coveted Gao Yu in this life and wanted to capture her as his furnace. He was currently crossing the sea with the 4 women. Everyone has their own way to reach the demon continent, and Yang Chen is the only one who uses a high-speed magic weapon to rush across a large area of the sea. There is no one else but Yang Chen. As soon as the 4 women entered the ocean, they found that Yang Chen's whole momentum had changed, and there was a faint killing intent that was difficult to detect. If it weren't for living with Yang Chen for a period of time, the women might not have been able to discover this. This time we are going to the demon continent, we are going to gain experience. After setting off at sea, Yang Chen warned the 4 women very seriously. To be honest, I have never been there. I don't know what it is like over there, but one thing must be remembered. What? Sun Qingxue asked quickly. Whether we meet at sea or on the continent, we will not show any mercy to you and me. The only thing we have to do is to pick up any weapon we can use and kill each other. Otherwise, we can only be killed by the other party. In the past, all your and my sect, reputation, what alchemist, what genius disciple, are nothing in the demon continent. In the face of the beautiful faces of his 4 lovely wives, Yang Chen said very solemnly, "No enemy will care about this, and no one will show mercy to the fairer sex." Who will our enemy be? Shi Shanshan was more concerned about this question. No matter how fierce the enemy was, as long as they knew who the enemy was, they could always be prepared. In theory, the enemy should be the demonized monsters and cultivators on the demon continent. After thinking about it, Yang Chen said the answer he knew. In fact, Sun Qingxue still asked in a low voice, "Anyone other than us?" Yang Chen looked at the faces of the other 3 women and knew that they had thought about a lot of things, so Yang Chen only explained to the slightly simpler Sun Qingxue. "What if it is our blue cloud sex people?" Sun Qingxue seemed to be unable to accept such a thorough concept of friend and foe. She lowered her head slightly and asked in a low voice. Knowing that Sun Qingxue was coming to the demon continent to gain experience, Elder Hua explained some common sense of the demon continent to Sun Qingxue. In fact, only Gao Yu and Gong Sunling didn't know much. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were instilled a lot. Elder Hua cherished his disciples and even used his identity as an elder of the sect to get the contact information of some disciples of the Blue Cloud sect who were gaining experience in the demon continent, and told Sun Qingxue that once there was trouble, go to the disciples of the sect. In any case, those disciples who have been able to take root in the demon continent are always better than those who have just arrived. With these people taking care of her, I believe there will be nothing serious. On the demon continent, even the people of our own sect have to be on guard. Faced with Sun Qingxue's question, Yang Chen spat out this helpless answer. Chapter 992. Next, Yang Chen used his actions to show the four lovely wives what was called cold-blooded and ruthless. On the vast sea, the sea monsters encountered all the way, without asking the right and wrong, they would attack when they met. If he could kill them quickly, Yang Chen never held back. He would directly attack and kill them quickly. At first glance, there was a gap in the realm, and the battle needed to be in a stalemate for a long time. Yang Chen always ran at high speed and never stopped for a moment. This situation was fine once or twice, but after several times in a row, the women seemed to be a little puzzled. Why run? Sun Qingxue was puzzled by this. It was clear that they could win. As long as they persisted for a period of time, maybe the five of them could kill the other party together, but they had to run away, which seemed very shameful. 2 purposes. Yang Chen stretched out 2 fingers without hesitation and said very clearly, "First, we are in a hurry now, and we can't waste too much time on the road. The same is true on the path of cultivation. You should know what your main goal is now. You can't forget your original purpose because you are disturbed by some troubles. In addition, the same is true for cultivation skills. It is better to be proficient in one skill than to be proficient in one skill. I believe you know it better than me." Listening to Yang Chen's words, the women were taken aback. Although it was said that it would not delay the journey, the latter words were the key point. The 4 women couldn't help but begin to think about what was the main goal of their cultivation now. Was it just to gain experience? Or were there other more important things? It was better to be proficient in one skill than to be proficient in one skill. This was very much in line with the taste of the women. When everyone was cultivating, the elders of the sect told them that they must specialize in one skill, either alchemy or refining. None of the 4 women deviated from this. In addition to cultivation, Gao Yu specialized in refining, and Gong Sunling even cultivated the formation, which was even purer than Gao Yu. As for Shi Shanshan, there was nothing else but the flying sword. Needless to say, Sun Qingxue was willing to abolish her own cultivation base at the beginning because of her own cultivation mistakes. The persistence in her heart was by no means comparable to ordinary people. Second, it is also to demonstrate to you the easiest way to survive after arriving at the demon continent. Yang Chen waited for the girls to think about it, then he put down 2 fingers and said with a smile, "If the attack doesn't hit, immediately escape. This is the safest way." The demon continent was extraordinary. If one was not careful, the price of life would be the price. To a large extent, the Dao sect's fighting style was incompatible with this place. If they could not find an effective way to gain a foothold in the early stages, then the 4 women would be in danger. Even if Yang Chen had great abilities, it was impossible for him to pay attention to the 4 women all the time. Therefore, it was absolutely better to let the 4 women master their own survival methods than to protect him. Teaching a man to fish was better than teaching him to fish. This was the correct logic. Then if it's an opponent that we can defeat, as long as it takes a little longer, can't it? Sun Qingxue's words actually represented the thoughts of the 4 women, but she was the only one who asked. No. Yang Chen categorically denied Sun Qingxue's words, and at the same time denied the thoughts of his 4 wives. Why? With the support of the other 3 sisters, Sun Qingxue was not afraid to look at her husband, putting on an unconvinced posture, waiting for Yang Chen to explain. Gao Yugong, Sunling, and Shi Shanshan stood behind Sun Qingxue in cooperation, and 4 pairs of beautiful eyes looked at Yang Chen. I know that you are all genius disciples who have reached the Yuanying stage at a young age in the sect. Facing a guy who can't even be considered a strong enemy, it will make you lose face if you don't fight. When Yang Chen saw that all his wives were standing opposite him, he couldn't help but smile bitterly, and then began to explain. It's normal to fight and win in the face of the enemy, right? The 4 women nodded in unison, and the neat movements of the 4 beautiful faces in front of Yang Chen were simply the most pleasing painting. But Yang Chen didn't have any appreciation at the moment. He had to persuade the 4 women to prepare for the cruelest battle. If you really think so and plan to do so, you may not even survive a month in the demon continent. Yang Chen was very rude to the women, and he didn't leave any face. Even if your cultivation base is twice as strong as it is now, the result will be the same. Yang Chen's performance was so serious that the 4 women couldn't help but be cautious. As the husband of the 4 women, Yang Chen would never harm them. In this case, then Yang Chen had enough reasons to say so. The fighting style of the Dao sects was very similar to the confrontation between the 2 armies. Even if it was to eliminate demons and defend the Dao, they had to yell from a distance first and tell the other party that they would die before they would make a move. There was nothing wrong with this method. As a famous sect, of course, they couldn't teach and punish. They always had to kill the other party if they wanted to die. Or they would make an appointment early and issue a life and death challenge. Yang Chen had experienced this method several times. However, if they always insisted on this method and didn't know how to be flexible, then it was still a small matter to encounter the monster race and demon sect disciples. The other party's general sneak attack could also be traced, and they could always guard against it if they were cautious. The problem was that there were not only monster race and demon sect disciples on the demon continent. In fact, all the cultivators could be regarded as one group. Everyone's common enemy was the demons who had been demonized by the demonic energy. Any cultivator, whether it was a Taoist cultivator, monster cultivator, or an ordinary monster beast, once they were accidentally invaded by the demonic energy and couldn't resist the invasion of the demonic energy, they would be demonized by the demonic energy and become a demonic creature without any normal thinking. When they saw a living creature with spiritual power, they would instinctively absorb the other's spiritual power to strengthen themselves. There were only 2 consequences of being absorbed by a demonic creature, either death or becoming a new demonic creature. In fact, the war in the immortal world that started thousands of years later in Yang Chen's previous life was to deal with more powerful demons. It was just that Yang Chen didn't know if these demonic creatures were related to the demons. After some powerful demonic creatures died, the demonic energy of their whole body would condense into a demonic bead. After the demonic bead was processed to remove the demonic energy in it, it was the best medicine for cultivators to promote their cultivation, even better than medicinal materials such as 1,000-year-old ginseng. It must be known that before the demonic creatures were demonized, they had good strength. The demonic bead was almost another way of condensing the essence of life and cultivation, which was of great benefit to cultivators. The stronger the demonic creature, the higher the level of the condensed demonic bead, and the better the effect. Of course, it was best to be able to kill in one blow. But once caught in a bitter battle, it would definitely be a disaster for cultivators. Chapter 993. The way the demonic creatures fought was completely different from the thinking of normal people. Generally, the demonic creatures always appeared in group. If you are surrounded by several demonic creatures, and you don't have the means to kill the other party quickly or escape, in addition to being attacked by the demonic creatures, you also have to resist the invasion of the demonic energy. No matter how high your cultivation base is, you will die with hatred. Therefore, this method advocated by Yang Chen was definitely the most suitable way after arriving at the demon continent. It was not only useful for establishing a foothold in the early stage, but even for the veterans who have survived here for a long time, it was also applicable. Of course, after getting used to it, everyone would naturally develop their own way of doing things. Each method is extremely suitable for fighting and survival, and there will never be another direction. This is not the same as what our sect knows. Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan obviously had more doubts. What Yang Chen said was completely different from what some people in the sect who had been to the demon continent and returned alive said. Which one should they listen to? The demonic energy is constantly spreading, but it is temporarily restricted to the demon continent. There is no particularly good way to suppress it now. Yang Chen explained very seriously. In order not to cause unnecessary panic, the entire demon continent is sealed by a formation, and there are only a few entrances. And everyone who enters the demon continent will be forced to make a great heart oath that they must not disclose the true situation on the demon continent to outsiders in any way. For this reason, the masters who arranged the sealing formation at the beginning have unified a set of lies, so that the masters who return from the demon continent can cope with the questioning of others. Yang Chen explained quickly. Generally, the masters who go back alive will have a good future, and will never use their own lives to fulfill a sect in this matter. These things were learned by Yang Chen from a dying master in the spiritual world. The master had experienced the experience of the demon continent. He had always been tight-lipped until he met a great enemy in the spiritual world and was dying. Only then did he say this to Yang Chen. Yang Chen only knew a little about it, and didn't even know what the demonic qi was, so he only had this concept, but the real situation of the demon continent was still very vague. It could almost be said that he didn't understand the real demon continent at all. Listening to Yang Chen's words, the four women were a little stunned. What kind of person could set up a formation that could seal a continent in such a big way without letting the leaders of Haotian Taoism, including the Taishanmen, know about it? Could it be another unknown force? In this regard, Yang Chen was not very clear. He could only know everything after going to the demon continent in person. However, some survival methods had to be instilled in the four girls in advance, so that they would not suffer when the time came. When you enter the demon continent, you will face cruel killing. After Yang Chen waited for everyone to digest it, he continued. The demons are everyone's common enemy, but our enemies are not only demons, but also countless cultivators who will do anything to snatch the devilish bead. Each devilish bead is equivalent to a few years or even decades of hard work. No one will not be tempted. The reason why the masters who can go back alive have a good future is because of the existence of the devilish bead. No matter how poor a person's aptitude is, when he uses this kind of cultivation that is almost equivalent to the accumulation of time, he can always become a master of a generation. Coupled with the strong combat awareness, he will become a peerless master 100%. Devilish bead is such a heaven-defying thing. How can no one know about it? Shi Shanshan was very concerned about improving her cultivation, and immediately asked the key point. If we can find a lot of devilish beads, can our cultivation be greatly improved? In theory, yes. Yang Chen directly gave an affirmative answer. However, I don't recommend you do this. In addition, there are not many opportunities to get the devilish bead. Not every demon will condense the devilish bead after death. Only demons that are strong to a certain extent will have the devilish bead after death, and they can't fight too much before they die. Yang Chen is not clear for the time being about what kind of cultivation base a demon needs to condense the devilish bead, but he also knows that the chance to get the devilish bead is probably 1 in 10,000, which is very difficult. As for why Yang Chen doesn't recommend the girls to take the devilish bead, there is another reason. For cultivators whose cultivation aptitude is not very outstanding, using these external objects to improve their cultivation base is a faster way than their own cultivation. But for talented disciples like Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, this is not a good idea. No matter how good the external power is, It is always better than the power of their own cultivation. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue have made a big name for themselves in their previous life, and they have suppressed countless masters who have experienced the experience of the demon continent, relying on this. For Yang Chen's current 4 wives, they came here to gain experience, that is, they really came here to gain experience. As for other gains, they don't have to worry too much about it for the time being. This is also what Yang Chen said at the beginning, to understand what their main purpose is, to give up the trivial things they should give up. The 4 women finally understood Yang Chen's good intentions and began to treat it carefully. The experience along the way was also completely in accordance with the method taught by Yang Chen: 1 strike and then leave, never stop. Most importantly, they should be able to quickly judge the strength of the opponent in this blow, and then make further choices. This was the real point. While practicing this fighting style, the 4 girls consciously fought on their own. Everyone knew in their hearts that the 5 people could not be together forever, and it was not a good thing for anyone to always live under the protection of Yang Chen's wings. This point the 4 women understood, and Yang Chen himself also understood. And although the women were very harmonious when they were together, there was not necessarily no competition in their hearts. At least Yang Chen knew that Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan were united against Gao Yugong's Sunling, and there would also be some friendly competition between Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan, and between Gao Yugong's Sunling. No one was convinced to be overwhelmed by others, so naturally they worked hard and competed in secret. There were a lot of joint attack practice on weekdays, but the frequency of each person going out alone was not low. No one wanted to see others better than themselves. They were cultivation geniuses themselves. After being pointed out by Yang Chen, although the cultivation of the 4 women did not directly improve, their combat effectiveness rose sharply. He believed that those guys who could compete with the women before they set off would definitely die very ugly against the 4 women at this moment. In the training of the women, the demon continent finally appeared in front of everyone. Chapter 994. From the Tao sects of the Central Plains to the demon continent, it had been 13 years of drifting on the sea, and everyone finally saw the shadow of the demon continent in front of them. Even without judgment, everyone knew that this must be the demon continent. Before they got close, they could detect the restriction of the formation. 100 miles away, they heard the warning sound. 100 miles ahead, the demon continent, 9 out of 10, turned back quickly. A majestic but not annoying voice very seriously repeated the above 4 sentences, as if to warn the approaching people, "Where is this place?" Finally arriving at the destination, all the women were looking forward to it. They didn't know what the demon continent was like, and what kind of challenges they would encounter. During these 13 years, the women honed themselves all the way at sea. They encountered countless sea beasts of the Yuanying and Deshang stage, and even once they almost bumped into the territory of a sea beast that was crossing its tribulation. If Yang Chen hadn't discovered it early and used the overturning sea jasper lamp to shield his spiritual awareness and speed up, he might have been led into the range of the tribulation and was attacked by the tribulation. There were battles almost every day, and they had to escape every day. Even most of the time, Yang Chen would drive the shuttle a little further away to observe, until the women or one of the wives ended the battle or escaped the attack range of the sea beast. Then he would take them into the shuttle. When they arrived here, the women's combat experience was already extremely rich. In other words, their experience in protecting themselves was also extremely rich. It was better to practice in advance at sea than to practice after facing the demonic creatures. When they were almost 10 miles away from the coast, there was a voice telling everyone which direction to go to avoid being attacked by the formation. Yang Chen didn't show off. He honestly followed the instructions of the voice and circled along the coastline for almost thousands of miles before he came to a portal that could enter the demon continent. It was really a huge portal, and he didn't know who made it. The huge stone with a height of several tens of feet was carved with dragons and phoenixes, which was extremely exquisite. When everyone appeared, put away the shuttle and entered the portal. They were like 5 small ants under the huge arched portal. Everyone's spiritual awareness couldn't explore the door at all, and they couldn't even see the scene inside the door. All the way along the coastline for thousands of miles, it was the same situation. At sea, they didn't know what the situation was like on the demon continent. As soon as they entered the huge arched door, Yang Chen was slightly stunned. Inside the arched door was a huge square that could accommodate tens of thousands of people. On the other side of the plaza was a slightly smaller door. But at this moment the door was tightly shut, and no one knew when it would open again. At this moment, there were over 100 cultivators scattered around the huge square. There were humans and demons, and each of them had formed a few small groups that were scattered in various directions. When they saw someone enter, they all looked up. Before the 4 women entered the door, they had already covered their faces with veils, but their graceful and perfect figures still attracted many covetous gazes. This veil was refined by Yang Chen when the women were practicing on the sea. While covering their faces, it did not affect their vision at all. It was very suitable for the 4 women to use. The people sitting in the square didn't talk much. They were scattered in groups, and everyone's eyes seemed to be on guard. Their spiritual awareness could already be used, but no one would easily explore it. With so many people gathered here, it was no less than provocation to easily use their spiritual awareness to explore. Everyone was sitting and waiting in the square, and Yang Chen was of course no exception. He directly found a direction with fewer people, walked to the edge with the 4 women, and then occupied this corner and sat down. Almost everyone in the square looked straight at Yang Chen's group of 5 walking over there. Some guys looked at the 4 women's attractive figures and seemed to have begun to drool. However, no one spoke, no one moved, everyone just watched. It was a young man who had been sitting in a corner. When he saw Yang Chen and his party, his eyes lit up. When Yang Chen and others sat down, he stood up and walked towards Yang Chen's side. One person's action immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's eyes followed the young man's action all the way until he stopped 2 feet away from Yang Chen's family. The entrance and exit door opens once a month, and this place will open in 3 days. Before opening the door, no one is allowed to fight here. The young man was very handsome, and he didn't look tough at all. He was also at the early nascent soul stage, and he didn't seem to be a threat at all. "Thank you for telling me." Yang Chen thanked the other party. "I'm Yang Chen Rishing, I don't know your name?" Being in the demon continent, Yang Chen also had an extra eye and didn't tell the other party's true identity. "I'm Li Cheng." The young man also returned the salute, but his eyes turned to the 4 women. "These are a few of my friends." Yang Chen casually introduced to Li Cheng, "Han Mei, Lu Yun, Shui Wu, Bai Xia. We plan to come here together this time to gain experience." Yang Chen used a fake name himself, and naturally would not tell the other party the true fate of the 4 women. The demon continent was insidious and treacherous, and it was necessary to guard against others. Good aptitude. Li Cheng cupped his hands at the women, whispered a word, and then turned to leave. But before leaving, he whispered to the crowd, "Maybe we will meet again in the future." Watching Li Cheng return to his original corner, Yang Chen discovered that Li Cheng was alone. It was very rare to see a person come to the demon continent to gain experience, but Yang Chen soon found that he was a little strange. Among the hundreds of people around them, at least 3 of them were sitting alone. Those 3 guys seemed to be at the middle and late nascent soul stage, and at a glance one could see their toughness. Even if he didn't know them, he knew that they must have been honed in some difficult places. Although there was no murderous aura released from their bodies, the fierce smell could be found no matter how far away. Among the more than 100 people in the square, there were only a few Jidon stage masters, and the rest were nascent soul stage masters, but it seemed that so many people added up were not as fierce as these 3 guys. Most people's eyes were always focused on the 3 masters, intentionally or unintentionally. In this regard, the three people were simply dismissive, sitting on their own as if they were not affected at all. After some observation, even the eyes of the four women began to sweep over the three people, but Yang Chen's attention was always on Li Cheng, who had just come to speak. Chapter 995. Li Cheng's performance didn't seem to be anything special. Strictly speaking, he was just a little enthusiastic, and came over to tell Yang Chen the day to open the door. Judging from the realm that he revealed, Li Cheng was just in the early yuanying stage, and he was not a threat to most people here. And looking at the kind of tender and enthusiastic appearance that he showed, it was easy to be ignored by everyone. Gao Yugong, Sunling, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were carefully observing everyone in the square. Although these people may be in the same camp after they go in, no one can guarantee that there will be no other thoughts inside. The four women were very defensive in their hearts. Soon, the four women found that Yang Chen seemed to be paying attention to Li Cheng intentionally or unintentionally, and they were all puzzled about it. They wanted to ask, but this was not the place, so they could only hold their doubts in their hearts. Li Cheng didn't give people an outstanding feeling, but Yang Chen always felt a little strange. But for a while, he couldn't find out what was strange. Many cultivators who came here to gain experience may have been misled by people, thinking that this was a place for killing each other. Before coming to this square, they had been listening to the guidance of the mysterious voice. In the square, everyone was waiting for the door to open, and it was still safe for the time being. However, as the time to open the door approached, some people began to have some unnecessary thoughts. There were still an hour before the door would open, and the people in the square were no longer sitting honestly and began to walk around. "Kid, come here alone, be careful not to lose your life. Join us, and we will guarantee your safety, how about it? You few little Jedon stage also dare to come to the demon continent. If you want to live, be my slaves, this old man can take care of you." First of all, the few people who were alone and the few Jedon stage cultivators were threatened by the gangs of several people around them. Of course, the three who seemed fierce did not dare to do so, they just targeted Li Cheng and a few small groups of one or two people. When Yang Chen thought he would stay out of it for the time being, someone put his mind on him. To be exact, it was on the women around him. Right now, 10 people were walking toward Yang Chen. All of them were nascent soul cultivators, both men and women. The core was a very handsome man who looked very dashing. There were also 4 women beside the man. However, it was obvious that they were either his concubines or servants. They seemed to be very attached to the man. One of them even stayed in the man's arms. The remaining 5 looked very fierce. They were either the man's bodyguards or servants. Facing Yang Chen was a brawny man with his arms crossed in front of his chest. "My young master has taken a liking to your friends and wants to invite them to train together." When the burly man spoke, his face was almost raised to the sky. He only used his chin to look at people with disdain. "Lu San, be polite. Don't scare the ladies." The young master's voice came from behind the strong man, and he instructed him casually. A strong man in the nascent soul stage was called such a vulgar name as Lu San. He only had a surname and no given name, which was replaced by a number. Obviously, he was a servant. "Yes, young master." The strong man hurriedly bowed and answered. Then he leaned forward and whispered viciously in a voice that only Yang Chen could hear. "Kid, if you know what's good for you, you'd better be honest. Otherwise, I'll let you die an ugly death. Go away." Yang Chen's eyes squinted at the strong man and shouted. The strong man was stunned, and then a cruel light appeared in his eyes. A ferocious smile also appeared on his face. "Good, kid, you have guts. My young master likes people like you the most. He especially likes to torture you in front of the women he likes. If you don't want to die now, get out of here." Yang Chen snorted coldly again. This time, the strong man smiled ferociously again and stepped aside. Immediately, the young master walked over with the woman in his arms. "Take off your veils. Let me see what kind of beautiful faces you have." The arrogant voice of the young master sounded, but this time he was facing the four women directly and did not pay attention to Yang Chen at all. The four women did not raise their heads and ignored the young master, who came out of nowhere. There was no other way, the territory of the mortal world was too big, and the Tao sect only occupied a small piece of territory. Countless cultivators were distributed in the vast territory, so it was normal to not know where they came from. Good cauldron! The young master did not care. He just looked at the four women unscrupulously, as if he was admiring goods, and praised them. The woman in his arms was a little unwilling, but the young master did not care. He just tightened his arms and his face changed slightly. The woman in his arms did not dare to say anything more and could only lean her head on the young master's arms with grievance. She had long been used to the young master's problem of being fickle. It was nothing more than fighting for favor. The four cold women, even if they were favored for a while, they could not compete with her. The four women still ignored him, but the young master smiled indifferently. He had seen many women like this. At first, they ignored him, but when they really knew how good he was, they could no longer let go. The four women around him were proof. Lu San. The young master looked at the four women and shouted at the strong man just now. Lu San is here, young master. Lu San immediately replied loudly. Kill him as soon as he enters the door. The young master dropped a sentence, then walked to the door with the woman in his arms. Lu San responded in a low voice, then shook his head left and right, and two strong men about the same size as Lu San stood on the left and right sides of Yang Chen, looking at Yang Chen as if looking at a dead man. The people in the square had already discussed almost at this moment, and those who should make a decision had already made a decision. They were clearly divided into several groups, a few fewer than at the beginning. The portal to enter the demon continent was finally opened in the expectation of everyone. Then, several groups that were close to it walked in first. Then it was the guys who were alone. Later, the young master and his concubines and servants also walked into the portal with a laugh. On the square, after a while, only Yang Chen's family of 5 was left. At this time, they slowly got up and walked towards the door. Are you ready? At the side of the door, Yang Chen asked the 4 women. Yes. The 4 women nodded and replied in unison. Let's go. Yang Chen laughed and took the lead in stepping into the portal. The 4 women followed closely and all entered the demon continent. Boy die. Lu San's familiar voice sounded directly in everyone's ears. Chapter 996. Several rays of light rushed straight to Yang Chen. They did not give Yang Chen any time to prepare at all. They intended to take Yang Chen's life as soon as they came up. It seemed that the people around the young master were swift and decisive guys. They didn't talk nonsense and directly killed him, neat and tidy. Yang Chen stood in the same place as if he was scared silly, motionless. Seeing that the 3 sword lights were about to fall on Yang Chen's body, suddenly there were 3 rays of light beside Yang Chen, blocking the flying sword. It was Gao Yu, Sun Qingxue, and Shi Shanshan at the same time, each blocking a sword. Immediately afterward, 3 beautiful figures rushed out and fought with Lu San and the others who rushed up. Gong Sunling quickly stood in front of Yang Chen, as if she was Yang Chen's personal bodyguard. She looked around like a tiger, not daring to relax at all. The young master, who was waiting to watch the show not far away, directly turned into a sluggish state at this moment. What is this situation? A man hiding behind a few women? It turned out that these women were not Yang Chen's concubines, but bodyguards? Thinking about the women around him, all of them were cultivation furnaces, and their cultivation was a little lower than his. Asking them to be bodyguards was simply courting death. Compared with the women around Yang Chen, it seemed that the people around him were a lot worse. After killing this annoying kid, Yang Chen, this time, he must subdue these women who seemed to have good qualifications. They could be cauldrons and bodyguards. Just thinking about it made him feel cool. Be careful, don't hurt these girls. The young master suddenly thought of a problem and quickly reminded loudly. If Lu San and the others were to disregard everything and hurt these girls, it would really be a pity. When he thought of the beautiful figures of the 4 women, the young master was more and more looking forward to their beautiful faces under the veil. In any case, he couldn't let Lu San and the others destroy this wonderful feeling. What responded to him was not the familiar voice of Lu San shouting, "Yes, young master," but a bloody head flying straight to him. Just immersed in the wonderful fantasy, the young master did not pay attention to the battle. He was very confident in the ability of Lu San and the others. You must know that these guys had killed more than one master of the late Yuanying stage in his territory. Yang Chun and the others were all in the early Yuanying stage, so it was not a problem at all. However, the bloody heads destroyed all of his beautiful fantasies. Decapitating a few delicate girls while they were still alive was not a good thing. It was too much of a spoiler. The young master was about to sweep the head away with a flick of his sleeve, so that he wouldn't see what he shouldn't see, but suddenly his eyes widened and he looked at the flying head incredulously. The head of a beautiful woman couldn't be so ugly. On the head that kept rolling, the 2 big eyes that died with injustice, coupled with the shocked expression on the face, perfectly stopped the expression of the owner of the head at the moment of death, at the moment of decapitation. Those eyes were so familiar, their owner had been by his side for no less than 100 years. At this time, the young master reacted. The head turned out to be the head of Lu San that he had just ordered. The woman in his arms also saw the head clearly and screamed in horror. They were all promoted to the Yuanying stage by the young master with a secret method and various medicinal pills. Where did they have any combat experience? They used to watch the young master's people kill people, but now their own people were killed. It was the first time. Looking at the familiar person's head, several women screamed in horror. With the blood drops that kept falling in the air, it was as if a scene of a horror film was playing. With the screams of a few women, another head flew up. They were both thrown in the same direction. They were both drenched in blood, and they both died with grievances. "Leave one for me." Gong Sun Ling made a sweet voice on the other side, and through the veil of the face, it reached the ears of all the people present. Of the 3 slaves who started, only one was left who had been seriously injured by Sun Qingxue and was about to be beheaded. His opponent, Sun Qingxue, was just about to make a move. When she heard the cry of Gong Sun Ling, she flew up and kicked the unlucky guy to the front of Gong Sun Ling. Gong Sun Ling was not polite and quickly received the seriously injured guy into the mountain river geographical map. This neat action, anyone could imagine the kind of smiling expression under the veil of Gong Sun Ling. A Yuanying stage master suddenly disappeared without a trace, and suddenly everyone was shocked. The remaining 2 servants of the young master hurriedly blocked in front of the young master, shielding the young master and his woman behind them, and looked at Yang Chen and his party in horror. "How can you be killed so quickly? It's a pity." Gong Sunling's voice sounded again. It was very beautiful. Just listening to her voice, one could imagine how beautiful the face behind the veil was. But on this occasion, Gong Sunling's natural voice made people involuntarily feel creepy. A group of onlookers looked at Gong Sunling as if they were looking at a man-eating demon. Being decapitated and dying without a whole body, it was already a terrible way to die, but in front of this girl with a beautiful voice and a good figure, it seemed that even this couldn't be done. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. It was not like he disappeared out of thin air, but he was received into a space magic weapon. The delicate little girl was not afraid of what kind of damage a master in the late Yuanying stage would cause to her space magic weapon. This could only explain one thing, that was, she completely ate that guy. Taking people away would never make them eat and drink well, everyone knew this. So, what would happen to the poor guy? They could guess 1 or 2 things. Even killing people was a pity. The future of the guy who was alive might not be as good as dead. Many people were waiting here with the idea of watching a show. The scene in the square just now was not something that no one had seen. People had the habit of watching a good show, especially watching this kind of show. They could roughly estimate the strength of the two sides. For the guys who may become their future opponents, everyone wanted to pay attention to them. However, half of the people felt a chill in their hearts when they saw this. The three women who rushed out of Yang Chen's side, their moves were simply more ruthless than the other. Almost in the blink of an eye, the outcome was already clear. The first was Shi Shanshan, followed by Gao Yu. After the other party only made a sword move, she used a strange movement and sword technique to behead them mercilessly. His moves were steady, accurate, and ruthless, causing people to be shocked. Chapter 997. After 13 years of practicing with those ferocious sea beasts on the sea, the four women's current fighting style was almost instinctive. If they didn't move, once they moved, it would be fatal and merciless. If it weren't for Gong Suanling's timely shout, wanting the Mountain River geographical map to accept one more Yuanying stage master, the last guy would definitely be beheaded by Sun Qingshu. From this battle, it could basically be seen what the cultivation of the three women were. Shi Shanshan had no distractions, her combat effectiveness was the most powerful, and she was the first to kill her opponent. After Gao Yu successfully refined the dragon horn flying sword, coupled with the simultaneous cultivation of water and fire, she was almost at the same time as Shi Shanshan. There was only a line of difference. Only Sun Qingshu was not ruthless enough. Although she hit her opponent hard, she had not perfectly achieved a one-hit kill. Of course, this was related to the cultivation base and the opponent. After a few confrontations, the three powerful slaves that the young master had relied on became two corpses and one was missing. It was clear that the losers were three in the late Yuanying stage, and the three women who won were only in the early Yuanying stage. This result shocked everyone who saw this scene. The young master was already a little panicked. He couldn't have imagined that the women he wanted to take over as furnaces were so powerful. If he had known this, he wouldn't have provoked them. Now, his three most powerful subordinates have been lost. How could the remaining two be the opponents of the three women? The four women were just the playthings of the young master. Participating in the battle was not enough to send food. Only the young master himself had some combat effectiveness, but there was also Gong Sunling and Yang Chen who did not fight from the beginning. At this time, even a fool could see that Gong Sunling was definitely a master of the same level as Shi Shanshan, Gao Yu and Sun Qingshu. Which force came out of these four female masters? How could they be so terrifying? Gao Yu, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingshu, none of the three women took back the flying sword and slowly walked towards the young master from three directions. Gong Sunling didn't want to be left behind, so she stepped forward to face him. Although the four women's faces were covered by veils, the killing intent in their eyes was as obvious as a torch in the dark night. "I think we might have had a misunderstanding," the young master stammered as he spoke. He was no longer as arrogant as before. Instead, he was more pleading. "I am the young master of the trapped Dragon Valley. I have offended you before. I hope that seniors will be magnanimous and let me off this time." In order to survive, the young master of the trapped Dragon Valley didn't even care about his face. He was a late nascent soul stage expert, and he directly called a few early nascent soul stage cultivators seniors. It was simply the biggest joke in the world. Be it in terms of age or cultivation, he should be the senior of Yang Chen and the others, but now it was the other way around. However, no one around them laughed out loud when they heard this. When faced with the terror of life and death, it was understandable to lose one's composure. However, no one felt any sympathy for the young master. What was the purpose of coming to the demon continent? In order to carry out killing experience, like the young master, who came with his concubines and servants, clearly regarded the demon continent as a good place to play. Relying on the power of his family, he didn't take a cruel place like the demon continent seriously. He deserved to die. This kind of person will die here sooner or later, It was only the difference between early and late death. Early death and early reincarnation. Now he was killed by Yang Chen and the others, so as not to cause trouble for others in the future. There was not only a similar battle. From the beginning of entering the door, there had been several waves of people fighting separately, but Yang Chen's side was the first wave to determine the outcome so quickly. This is the demon continent. Yang Chen had been standing there without making a move, but at this moment, he opened his mouth and said. This sentence had already announced the death penalty of these people. To gain experience in the demon continent, one must be prepared to die at any time. Since they are here, those who are not prepared will only die. The difference is that Yang Chen and the others will make a move, or the demonic creatures will make a move, or others will make a move, that's all. The result will not be any different. The four women well showed the results of training on the sea, swarmed up, and faced with the already frightened opponents, they were merciless. Even if the other party already knew the power of the four women and was strictly on guard, they only persisted a few more than the previous three people. The young master and the two servants, without any accident, fell under the swords of the women, leaving the four beautiful concubines shivering on the side. Seeing the cold eyes of the four women looking at them, the four women knelt directly on the ground in fear and kept pleading. Gong Sunling stepped forward directly, and with a wave of her hand, the four women who did not dare to resist were received into the mountain river geographical map. Although these four women's combat effectiveness was poor, and it could even be said that they had no combat effectiveness at all, they were also Yuanying stage cultivators. As long as they breathed and refined their qi in the mountain river geographical map, they could increase the power of the mountain river geographical map. Although this method was cruel, it was better than killing them. It was better to live than to die, wasn't it? 10 people, 10 Yuanying stage cultivators. In the blink of an eye, there were only 5 corpses with their heads separated, and the other 5 disappeared without a trace. This scene made the people around feel a little scared. Yang Chen's group of 5, no one dared to despise them because of their early Yuanying stage cultivation base, but many people cast a frightened look. They believed that after this episode, at least these people who had just come in, no one would dare to easily hit them. Li Cheng, who had been staying here to watch the excitement, came forward at this moment, gave Yang Chen a thumbs up, smiled and praised. Brother Yang is really amazing. The people were killed by the 4 women, but Li Cheng gave Yang Chen a thumbs up, which made people feel very comfortable. However, Yang Chen did not underestimate this Li Cheng in the slightest. In his eyes, no matter how powerful those fierce guys were, he could always see through the strength of the other party. But this Li Cheng was a bit unpredictable. On the surface, he only had the strength of the early Yuanying stage, but when Yang Chen faced Li Cheng, he always had a feeling of fear, as if he was instinctively afraid of something. This was a feeling that Yang Chen had never felt before. Even when he faced the sect master of the Xiantian sect in his previous life, the other party could turn Yang Chen into ashes with a wave of his hand. Yang Chen did not have such fear. However, Yang Chen could not find any abnormalities with Li Cheng. This fear of the unknown was the most frightening thing. Fortunately, now Li Cheng seemed to have no malice to Yang Chen. He just said hello and left quickly. Yang Chen couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. His eyes turned to the world behind the door, and for the first time began to seriously look at the legendary demon continent. Chapter 998. All the scenes didn't look much different from the Central Plains Dao sects. If there was a difference, it was that there was a lush forest in the eyes, almost covering the entire field of vision. Exploring the depths of the forest with his spiritual awareness, Yang Chen quickly grasped the terrain of thousands of miles. In the forest, there were water networks and rivers. The weather here was obviously much hotter than that of the Central Plains Dao sects, and the air was much humid. Such an environment was suitable for many monsters to survive. In this vast and boundless huge jungle, it was not known how many fierce monsters were hidden in it. Almost thousands of miles away, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness detected an abnormal spiritual energy, which was estimated to be the demonic qi in those people's mouths. However, in this range, the demonic qi was very weak. It seemed to only seep out slightly from the center, which was not worth mentioning. If he wanted to kill the demonic creatures, he probably needed to go deeper. Not far from the entrance, there was a long table with hundreds of jade slips on the table. Some people had already seen it and went to pick up the jade slips to read, but everyone just picked up a few and put them down, and then picked up a piece casually and put it away. Yang Chen took care of the qiankuan bags of a few people, and after distributing the good things to the women, he came to the table, picked up a piece of jade slip and explored it with his spiritual awareness. The women were no exception, they all took a piece and looked at it. At first glance, Yang Chen discovered that what was recorded in this jade slip turned out to be a map of the demon continent. It recorded some peripheral gathering points, as well as some dangerous areas, and there were not many other records. It seemed that the people here were really well prepared, and even these were taken into account. At the moment, Yang Chen was no exception. He directly took a piece and put it away. In the demon continent, with such a map, he could save a lot of things. Presumably, the contents of the other jade slips were the same. Yang Chen no longer looked at it. After watching each woman collect a piece, he flew to the nearest gathering point. If he went to the gathering point for the first time, he could also understand some of the situation here. Of course, even if it was the nearest gathering point, they would still have to pass through a dangerous area on the map, and there might be fights along the way. "Husband, we have something to discuss with you." When Yang Chen controlled the shuttle flight, Gao Yu suddenly spoke to Yang Chen in a rare tone. "What is it? Say it." Yang Chen said very casually. He also sat at the table in the shuttle, but the four women all sat opposite him. "Husband, we would like to train by ourselves." After the four women looked at each other, Shi Shanshan suddenly said to Yang Chen. The expressions of the four women were very serious. Solo training? Yang Chen was a little surprised. In the demon continent, a place where a little carelessness would kill people, if 5 people worked together, the chance of survival would be greater. How could Yang Chen not be surprised that the 4 women wanted to train alone? We all feel along the way that every time we encounter something, you have to arrange it first, which seems to lose the meaning of training. This time it was Gao Yu who spoke again, using a tone of discussion. If we are all so dependent on the husband in the future, maybe we are almost the same as the concubines of that young master. The women that Gao Yu said, in addition to attaching to the side of the young master, pleasing and competing for favor, and being a furnace for the young master, in fact, they had no other use. Their cultivation was just to increase the chips to please the young master in front of him. Yang Chen has never regarded his wife as such a woman. Not to mention anything else, just the previous life's cold plum fairy and dancing snow fairy, so valiant, so peerless, how could they be someone's concubine furnace? But what Gao Yu said also seemed to have some truth. Yang Chen always tried to tell them what to do because he had the advantage of being reborn, but he also forgot that these women around him, even without him, should also live a very wonderful life. Going too far is as bad as falling short. Yang Chen suddenly understood where his mistake was. He paid too much attention to them, so much so that they were bound by their original growth. Cultivating in the framework given by others was a big taboo in cultivation, and the women were obviously aware of this problem. Now the 4 women were very serious about this matter to Yang Chen, and after thinking for a long time, Yang Chen finally nodded. The 4 women's training at sea had also been fruitful, which could be seen from the battle against the young master of the trapped Dragon Valley. Pay attention to safety. Yang Chen took out almost all the healing pills on him and distributed them to the 4 women. Since he wanted the 4 women to wander in the demon continent by themselves, he refined a large number of pills on the sea. When necessary, these pills were life-saving capital. Of course, the 4 women accepted their husband's kindness, and they all took the pills calmly. The naughty Sun Qingxue even kissed Yang Qin gently on the face. "Thank you, husband. Every other year, take a month to meet at this gathering point. Since they were going to be separated for experience, there must always be a day for everyone to get together, so that they could exchange experiences with each other, and Yang Chen could also give them some newly refined pills." The women nodded in agreement. Then Yang Chen told them some more, and then watched the 4 women leave in 4 directions one by one. Even Yang Chen himself didn't know why he was such a busybody. Maybe it was really because of the worries in his heart. After sending away the 4 wives, Yang Chen suddenly felt a little dispirited, and there was a trace of irritation in his heart. The departure of the 4 women was exactly the path they should take in cultivation, rather than being bound by him. This was the right thing to do, but Yang Chen couldn't make himself happy. Yang Chen was depressed, and naturally he had to find an object to vent. Being in the demon continent, wasn't it easy to find some killing opponents? The high-speed shuttle plunged into the dangerous area marked on the map. This was actually only the outermost area contaminated by the demonic energy, and there were only some monsters equivalent to the early Jedon stage. Under Yang Chen's venting slash, in just an hour, hundreds of Jedon stage monsters were turned into bloody fragments. However, this simple killing did not let Yang Chen completely vent his frustrations, so Yang Chen's idea was on the unlucky Li Liheng, who let Li Liheng leave a spiritual awareness imprint on himself, who let Li Liheng practice the so-called spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method, who let Li Liheng be the only guy who could contact outside the demon continent with Yang Chen's spiritual awareness. Then he could only be unlucky. Chapter 999. The demon continent shielded the spiritual awareness, which was the credit of the formation. Even if Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was powerful enough to reach the 2nd grade of human immortal, he couldn't break through this terrifying formation. However, there was one exception, and that was Li Liheng. The cultivation method he cultivated was the spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method. The strength of this cultivation method lay in the fact that the spiritual sense of the cultivator could pass through the barrier between the mortal world and the spiritual world and the immortal world. Even if Li Liheng's cultivation was still very low, it was still not difficult for him to pass through the small spiritual sense shielding array in the mortal world. So, the poor Taishanmen young sect master Li Liheng became the victim of Yang Chen's anger at this time. When he was cultivating, he was surrounded by the sudden anger of Senior Lu Fengzi. He didn't even know what happened. "You damn liar!" With a majesty that people couldn't look at, Senior Lu Fengzi's anger simply made Li Liheng at a loss. Senior Lu Fengzi even directly denounced him as a damn liar. The pressure like a mountain directly pressed Li Liheng's consciousness firmly in a corner. Feeling the monstrous anger of Senior Lu Fengzi, Li Liheng couldn't even express a word. Li Liheng never discovered that when he faced a person's anger, he could be so terrifying. Even when he faced the anger of Sect Master Li, he was only afraid on his face, and there was a little rebellion in his heart, but in the face of Senior Lu Fengzi's anger, he didn't even dare to breathe. Heartbeat? Will that thing disturb Senior Lu Fengzi? Can you make it stop? Finally, after a storm of flames from Senior Lu Fengzi, the senior's mood calmed down a little. The huge pressure that had always been pressing on his head also eased a little, allowing Li Liheng to finally have the opportunity to express a little of his thoughts. But it was only a little, nothing else. "Senior, is there any misunderstanding?" Li Liheng looked at the situation and asked cautiously. He really didn't know how he had offended Senior Lu Fengzi. It would incur such a monstrous anger. The young sect master of Taishanmen, recently in the sect, he had the wind and rain. He had never suffered such terrifying pressure. Right now, Li Liheng only wanted to prove his innocence and not let Senior Lu Fengzi bear a grudge against him. After all, everything he had now was given to him by Senior Lu Fengzi. Once he lost Senior Lu Fengzi's support, he could only be the pitiful worm that could be bullied by any medicinal hall expert. In fact, in the world of his consciousness, It could only be described as fear and trepidation. I've asked a few experts who have ascended from the sect. In the past hundreds of years, no disciple of the sect has ever cultivated the world-crossing spiritual cultivation technique. There really was a reason for Senior Lu Fengzi's rage. Of course, this was only an excuse that Yang Chen made up. Otherwise, how could he have an excuse to flare up? However, it was normal for those who had ascended not to know about the world-crossing spiritual cultivation technique. This was originally a secret that only a few core elders knew. Not everyone could know about it. In short, this reason was reasonable no matter how you looked at it. Recently, no core elders had ascended, and the last batch of elders who knew about the spatial spiritual cultivation method to ascend to the spiritual realm obviously didn't know that there was a little guy named Li Liheng who was cultivating this cultivation method that was almost impossible to succeed. Speak. Where did you come from? How dare you pretend to be a disciple of Taishanmen? After saying the reason just now, Senior Lu Fengzi's anger emerged again, and the monstrous power once again suppressed Li Liheng to the point that he could no longer speak. It seemed that Senior Lu Fengzi's anger was a little too big, and the terrifying pressure directly made the poor Li Liheng lose consciousness. Not only that, even the sect master and several core elders who would surround Li Liheng every time Li Liheng cultivated his mind also felt the terrifying pressure through Li Liheng, the medium. Along with the release of the pressure, there was an undisguised killing intent, which made everyone present feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Those servants with lower cultivation either fainted or were so scared that their teeth chattered. No one could still maintain the form of standing. After a long time, the terrifying aura slowly dissipated, and the sect master and several core elders came to their senses. Then they immediately began to treat Li Liheng, who had fainted because of the pressure. By the time Li Liheng woke up, the anxious elders finally understood what had happened. It turned out to be because of this, everyone had a feeling of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But thinking about it, this Senior Lu Fengzi didn't know how many times he had guided them. It had been dozens of years in total. On average, once a year there were dozens of times. After so many selfless pointers, if they were deceived by someone else, they would also be furious. What should I do? Senior Lu Fengzi doesn't believe that I am a disciple of Taishanmen. What should I do? Li Liheng was the person who placed the most importance on this issue. Everything he currently enjoyed, whether it was status, power, wealth, or women, all came from the support of Senior Lu Fengzi. Once Senior Lu Fengzi no longer believed in him, he would completely fall into hell. Sect Master Li looked at Li Liheng's anxious and frightened look, exchanged a look with several core elders, and then said gently, "It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter." Next, it was naturally to dismiss the left and right, and then set up dozens of restrictions, and then Sect Master Li comforted Li Liheng with a smile. "Don't be afraid, the sky has not fallen." But Senior Lu Fengzi doesn't believe in this disciple anymore. How could Li Liheng not be frustrated? For Sect Master Li, it can be said that he has already gotten the guidance that he dreamed of, and the same is true for several elders. Naturally, it is easy for them to stand and talk. But for Li Liheng, it is far from enough. My Taishanmen have a set of secret codes to identify each other. Sect Master Li felt that there were some things that should be known to Li Liheng, and now that the matter involved Li Liheng himself, he was not afraid of him divulging it. It is to let the seniors in the spiritual world recognize the disciples that my sect has placed in other sects. It is unknown how many chess pieces the Taishanmen have placed in other sects. Some of these chess pieces may be sacrificed, but some will ascend. Once they ascend to the spiritual world, their identity will not be recognized by the Xiantian sect, and that will be a big problem. Therefore, the Taishanmen naturally have a complete set of identification plans. Next time you contact Senior Lu Fengzi, just say a few words to him. Sect Master Li said confidently to Li Liheng. These are the secret codes that have been left for tens of thousands of years, and they are also evidence that you are the most core disciple of my Taishanmen. As long as you say these secret codes, Senior Lu Fengzi will definitely trust you. Chapter 1000. Yang Chen had no idea what the consequences of his momentary venting of anger would be. Anyway, this time he contacted Li Liheng. It would take a long time to contact him again, and he didn't know when the next time would be. After getting a little pleasure from Li Liheng, Yang Chen's irritable mood finally calmed down, and he began to think about what he should do on the Demon Continent. The devilish bead was a specialty of the Demon Continent, but for Yang Chen and his wives, it didn't mean much. However, these good things, Yang Chen could use them to refine a kind of medicinal pill to enhance his skills, which would be favored by many people. Of course, the main purpose of coming here was to gain experience. Even if Yang Chen has had 10,000 years of experience in cultivating his mind in his previous life, the more experience he had in fighting with the demonic creatures, the better. It must be known that the spiritual world and the immortal world would not be peaceful in the next few thousand years. This kind of marginal area definitely had no significance for Yang Chen to gain experience. If he wanted to gain experience, he had to go to the central area. The map on the jade slip helped a lot, and Yang Chen soon found a way to a more dangerous area. In the jungle, there was basically no road, and in order to achieve the purpose of gaining experience, Yang Chen didn't even choose to fly on his sword, but chose to walk. The erosion of the demonic energy was more powerful as it got closer to the center. Once he was disturbed by the demonic energy during the flight, it was also a very troublesome thing. Before fully understanding the power of the demonic energy, Yang Chen still chose a cautious way. Anyway, he had plenty of time, and he came here to gain experience, so he didn't want to take the most dangerous path. Countless people died on the Demon Continent because they were not cautious enough. In fact, Yang Chen has already tried the power of the demonic creatures on the periphery. At the level of the Jedon stage, the Yuanying stage masters who came in could definitely deal with them. But many newcomers would be careless because of this and die in the hands of the swarm of demonic creatures, which was a pity. Hey, Yang Chen pulled back the blood demon vine sword from the head of a demonic creature dozens of times larger than himself and waited quietly. Sadly, even though this monster was at the beginning stage of the original level, it didn't have a demonic pearl. The only use was to make the blood phantom vine flying sword appear more radiant after swallowing the blood essence. Blood phantom vine flying sword does not need to be refined by Yang Chen in the future, as long as it constantly absorbs enough blood essence. Furthermore, the higher the opponent's cultivation, the better the effect. It seemed that if he wanted to obtain the baleful demon bead, he would need stronger demonic beasts, so he could only advance to a more dangerous area. After making up his mind, Yang Chen did not hesitate. He put away his flying sword and strode in the direction he had determined. With Yang Chen's speed, even if he were to walk, it wouldn't be a problem for him to travel a few hundred miles a day. Along the way, he killed some of the monsters that appeared sporadically, but in fact they would appear every once in a while. After 10 days, Yang Chen finally found that there were more and more monsters in front of him, and there were also some monsters in the late Yuanying stage or peak Yuanying stage. The monsters were all monsters eroded by the demonic energy, and there were all kinds of shape. In the past 10 days, Yang Chen had to fight with all kinds of monsters almost every day, and the fighting methods of these monsters were different, which made Yang Chen very addicted. The sudden increase in the number of monsters made Yang Chen a little overwhelmed. Finally, he saw what kind of fighting style that was completely based on instinct and was not afraid of death. Under such circumstances, the tactic of besieging Wei to rescue Zhao Zhao, which he had used in the battle against the cultivators, was completely useless. The demon simply didn't care whether the sword would pierce through its head or not. It stretched out its claws and opened its bloody mouth, pouncing forward without any regard for its life. Even if it died, it would still take a bite out of its opponent, which was truly frightening. However, such an opponent was also the best opponent to hone his skills and protect himself at the same time. In the face of such an enemy, there was no such thing as mercy or soft-heartedness. It was either you die or I die. There was no other choice. The crazy monsters sometimes would not even let go of their companions. A large area of attack came down, regardless of whether there were other monsters within the attack range. This forced Yang Chen to look in all directions and pay attention to the movements around him. With a continuous sound, Yang Chen's figure was flashing and moving, but the flying sword stabbed into the heads of the monsters from time to time. Every time he attacked, he would leave immediately, not daring to stop for even a moment. And every time he could perceive the attack that fell on the place where he had just landed, it was really dangerous. With the Golden Bell body protection technique and the Yellow Turban strongman body refining technique, Yang Chen was not afraid of this level of attack. But he came here not to verify the defensive power of the Golden Bell, but to hone his combat consciousness. Through this level of killing, he could abandon those unnecessary tricks and improve his combat effectiveness. Therefore, Yang Chen would not rely on the magic weapon to protect his body. A group of about 30 monsters was killed by Yang Chen one by one within the time of half a stick of incense. Although they were all monsters in the early Yuanying stage, Yang Chen was still sweating. It seemed that he was more tired than queuing up and fighting with 100 cultivators of the same cultivation base. The cultivators had a habit of not being straightforward enough, and Yang Chen would occasionally make a mistake from time to time. But in this environment, he couldn't afford to waste time. If he could kill more enemies, he needed more. The demon continent was indeed a good whetstone. Unfortunately, a lot of monsters did not mean that there was a devilish bead. With this group of monsters, Yang Chen still returned empty-handed and could only continue to move forward. Along the way, there was an endless stream of such small groups. Every once in a while, a new group would appear, and the group seemed to be growing larger and larger. If it weren't for Yang Chen's Yin-Yang 5 Elements secret art, he would have to stop or even retreat to rest in this series of battles. There seemed to be more and more monsters, and even Yang Chen was a little strange. Whether the Yuanying stage cultivator was in the Dao sex or the monster race, how could it be so easy to appear? But on this demon continent, it was simply endless, as if these monsters were born in the Yuanying stage. This was also a strange phenomenon, worthy of Yang Chen's research. However, before that, Yang Chen still had to study what was going on with the devilish bead. There were so many heavenly materials and earthly treasures in the Dao sex, and the elixirs of 10,000 years and 100,000 years, but they could not directly improve the cultivation of the user, but this devilish bead could actually raise the cultivation of people. If he knew what was going on, maybe Yang Chen could also study a similar elixir. Chapter 1001. Hard work pays off. After breaking into a few thousand miles deeper, Yang Chen finally got a devilish bead from a peak Yuanying stage demonic creature. The moment before the monster's death, its huge body suddenly began to collapse inwards, shrinking non-stop, as if its flesh and bones were all pressed together by a huge pressure. But Yang Chen's spiritual awareness told him that it was not the case, but there was a black bead in the brain of the demonic creature, which was madly absorbing the whole body essence of the demonic creature and condensing it together. This process was very short, only a few breaths of time to complete. Watching a huge monstrous beast suddenly turned into a black bead in a few breaths of time, even Yang Chen was a little shocked when he saw it for the first time. This bead was not big, only the size of the tip of the little finger. Yang Chen held it in his hand and squeezed it a little. It was a little hard, but Yang Chen did not dare to use force, for fear of crushing the bead. The bead was pure black, and from time to time there would be a trace of black mist lingering over it, which contained a tempting power. Moreover, this demonic baleful bead seemed to have a kind of attractive force. It was constantly attracting the person who obtained it to swallow it. Even a person who did not know what this thing was would not dare to make this decision casually, especially when this bead was condensed from a demonic creature. The untreated devilish bead, for cultivators, was simply a deadly poison. Unless it was the kind of guy with a weak will to the extreme, he would not be able to resist the silent temptation and swallow the devilish bead. But to be able to kill this level of demonic creature, but also to kill at least hundreds of them to get a devilish bead, would he be such an easy person to be tempted? Afraid that something would go wrong with this thing, Yang Chen even used an empty qiankuan bag to hold the devilish bead. When he got to the gathering point, he believed that many people would know how to deal with it. Only one was obviously not enough, whether it was used for research or to exchange for something. There was still time. Yang Chen still had to find more devilish beads. Trekking alone in this primitive forest, Yang Chen did not seem lonely at all. Almost every few miles, he would encounter a monster. Soon, Yang Chen noticed something different ahead. It seemed that there were relatively few demonic beasts in this direction, but it was not that there were none. After walking for dozens of miles, Yang Chen encountered a group of middle Yuanying stage demonic beasts, and they all rushed towards him. As soon as Yang Chen rushed into the battle, the blood demon vine flying sword flashed, and the two monsters were pierced in the head by Yang Chen and died. Just when Yang Chen thought that the result would be the same as the previous times, a sudden change occurred. The withered vines on the ground, which were as thick as a strong man's calf, seemed to have suddenly turned into living snakes, silently coiling towards Yang Chen. The demonic beasts encountered before were all animal-based monsters, but now it was obviously a plant monster beast. According to the experience on the territory of the Central Plains Dao sects, the older the plant, the stronger it was. It was the same on the demon continent. Yang Chen, who was fighting with dozens of demonic beasts, was keenly aware of this, but it seemed that it was a little late. At first, these vines did not have any signs of life. No matter how one looked at them, they looked like withered dead branches. But now, they had suddenly turned into a deadly giant net. Together with the monsters fighting with Yang Chen, they were wrapped up in the giant net woven by these huge vines that suddenly turned into living creatures. The giant net was so big that with Yang Chen's speed, he didn't even have time to escape. The sudden bondage forced Yang Chen to take out the most powerful posture. With the fastest speed, he killed the demonic beasts in the net and concentrated on dealing with this powerful demonized vine. If he didn't do this, he might be attacked by the demonized vine and the demonic beasts at the same time, and he would be in a dilemma. This batch of demonic beasts did not have a devilish bead, and even if there was, Yang Chen couldn't care about collecting it now. The corpses of the demonic beasts that were wrapped by the demonized vine had begun to make a sizzling sound, emitting a white gas that exuded a foul smell. The demonic vine had already extended a small spike, piercing into the corpses, madly absorbing the essence of the corpses. Even the demonic qi contained in the corpses was no exception, all of it was absorbed. Just for a while, in Yang Chen's field of vision, there were only piles of bones left, and after a while, even the bones were not left, only some ashes were left. Now Yang Chen was wrapped in a giant net woven by the demonized vine. Although the space in the net was still very large, it was getting smaller and smaller. Yang Chen had cut off at least a dozen vines that wanted to rush over and wrap around Yang Chen, but the vines still swept up as if they were not afraid of death. The blood demon vine's sword was obviously not powerful enough to deal with the demonic vine, which was also a plant. Yang Chen had replaced it with the bright ray sword of the fire attribute. When the sword slashed down, the demonic vine that was cut would immediately catch fire. However, this kind of flame could not hurt the demonized vine for the time being. The part of the fire could only last for a few breaths, and immediately the demonic vine would secrete a sap to extinguish the flame. Not only that, this sap was very magical. The vines that were cut off by Yang Chen would automatically stick together, and after a while, there was no trace of being cut. This was definitely a big guy, A big guy that had never been seen before. Yang Chen was also excited in his heart. Now he had not found where the roots of the demonized vine were. This guy even had the power to shield part of the spiritual awareness. The second-grade human immortal spiritual awareness cultivated by Yang Chen's three purities secret art could only be used within a range of 10 miles. Any further distance would be unable to be further explored. The huge body of more than 10 miles had not yet found the root. It could be imagined how fierce this demonic vine was. No wonder the demonic creatures in the surrounding dozens of miles were very rare. It must have become the fertilizer of this demonized vine. Up to now, Yang Chen didn't even judge the cultivation base of the other party. But seeing that it easily surrounded dozens of demonic beasts in the middle Yuanying stage, it was obvious that it was not inferior to the late Yuanying stage. It was likely to be the peak Yuanying stage, or even a higher Deshang stage demonic vine. If it was someone else in Yang Chen's realm, they would definitely be scared out of their wits, and they would have to seek survival everywhere. But Yang Chen's eyes were shining at the moment, and he was unspeakably excited. Finally, there was a decent opponent that could let him release his combat power to his heart's content. With a thought, at least thousands of flying swords appeared around Yang Chen, and then under the control of Yang Chen, they were directly woven into a dense sword net, and in turn, they went to the vine net that surrounded him. Chapter 1002. Myriad Sword Secret Art. This was the real Myriad Sword Secret Art. It was not the kind of technique that many cultivators use to transform a sword into 10,000 sword lights, but the real Myriad Sword Secret Art that used thousands of flying swords to attack. Among the Dao sects, perhaps some high-level sect could use the power of the whole sect to use such a trick. Apart from that, no one could be as extravagant as Yang Chen. It did not mean that having 10,000 flying swords in one's hands could make this big move. If the realm of spiritual awareness was not enough, it would be impossible to control thousands of flying swords. This was the real big trouble. Moreover, even if one's spiritual awareness was extremely powerful, the flying sword was not completely his own. The kind of flying sword that left the aura of the refiner could not do this. In this world, only Yang Chen, who was blessed by heaven with Shao Tian, could really make this move. Of course, every flying sword was controlled by Shao Tian, adding countless power out of thin air. Not to mention anything else, just in terms of sharpness, it was already far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. And now, Yang Chen wanted to use this characteristic. Tens of thousands of sharp flying swords slashed at the same tens of thousands of vines. Wherever the net of swords went, the vines that came into contact with it were cut up by thousands of blades, and countless tiny branches were sent flying. Can't the vines recover? Then let's just cut it a little bit and see how you recover. Yang Chen was playing with this idea, and he also needed to use this sword net to break the giant net of vines and escape from it. Always being in the circle of others, this was not an active way to fight. Yang Chen's method was very effective, and the vines that filled the sky were almost cut into pieces by this huge sword net. Unfortunately, Yang Chen did not escape from the giant net of vines. Although the vines that were chopped into pieces could not be restored for a while, every piece that was chopped off began to emit a thick black fog. Before Yang Chen's flying sword could fly back, the black fog had already contaminated the body of the flying sword. Not every flying sword was quenched in the same way as a life source magic weapon, and not every flying sword was used to the flying sword and was carefully refined. Therefore, those flying swords that were just like Shao Tian, who cleaned the unformed sword spirit in the flying sword and became blank, were immediately polluted by these black mists. Yang Chen, who was controlling the flying sword, immediately noticed that something full of all kinds of cold and terrifying aura had come into contact with his divine sense threads. He was immediately shocked. This was an unprecedented experience. Even when he killed the demonic beast with the demonic bead, he did not have such a feeling. This pervasive black qi, was it the demonic qi that had been purified by this demonic vine? The demonic chi of the demon continent was very deadly, but under normal circumstances, as long as they were not in a battle, basically the masters of the Yuanying stage could block the demonic chi outside their body. Of course, the premise was that they did not enter the area where the demonic chi was thick. Otherwise, if their cultivation base was not enough, they could only become the same as those demonic beasts. Yang Chen did not expect that he would be attacked by the demonic chi at this time. Although it only invaded the flying sword, the divine sense threads connected to the flying sword had already felt the aura of the demonic chi. If it was only a flying sword that was contaminated by the demonic chi, Yang Chen would not feel too much, but this time there were thousands of flying swords. Yang Chen's myriad sword secret art had also absorbed a lot of demonic chi while cutting countless vines. And all of these demonic chi were fed back to Yang Chen's mind through the divine sense threads connected to Yang Chen's divine sense. Boom! In Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, it was as if a bomb had suddenly detonated, and the whole shook. But it was immediately suppressed by Yang Chen's powerful divine sense. Countless strands of black chi penetrated along Yang Chen's divine sense threads and entered Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. The black chi only pervaded for a while, and it formed a black demonic vine phantom in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, and then began to attack wildly in all directions. However, this level of attack was simply not worth mentioning for Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. Yang Chen was about to easily erase this demonic vine phantom, and suddenly his heart moved. Wasn't this a good opportunity to understand the demonic chi? With the decision made, Yang Chen did not immediately expel and obliterate the demonic chi. Instead, he controlled all the flying swords to cut off the vines that had just been connected and had not yet fully grown. At the same time, he allowed the black mist to enter his sea of consciousness along his divine sense threads. The demonic vine phantom in his sea of consciousness was initially less than a foot in size, but as more and more black chi came in, the phantom began to grow, and soon it reached a radius of 10 feet. However, such a small size was simply a drop in the ocean for Yang Chen's hundreds of acres of sea of consciousness. In order to thoroughly understand the characteristics of these demonic chi, Yang Chen simply opened up his divine sense and began to actively absorb the demonic chi. This was quite a risky move, so when the demonic vine phantom in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness swelled to about 10 feet, Yang Chen stopped absorbing. All the flying swords were recalled, and the black chi attached to the flying sword was absorbed by Yang Chen. Then 2 fire dragons appeared around Yang Chen's body. The Yin fire and Yang fire of the Yin-Yang heaven burning fire directly formed a huge fire circle of 10 feet, blocking all the vines of the demonic vine. The instincts of the demonic vine that was cut off quickly recovered, but it seemed to be a little thinner than before. Then, countless branches began to rush toward the fire circle wrapped around Yang Chen. As soon as they touched the flames, the vines immediately burned, causing the branches to retreat. This time, the flame was completely different from the flame on Yang Chen's bright ray sword. Even if the demonic vine secreted more juice, it could not extinguish the burning flame. Instead, the juice was quickly roasted by the slowly burning flame and disappeared in the wind. The burning branches trembled in the air, as if they were in extreme pain, but no branches dared to fall. There were countless branches that were not burning, far away from Yang Chen, and the fire circle were wrapped in it, forming an airtight cocoon. Those branches that had been burned kept wandering around the forest, shaking wildly. After being unable to extinguish the flames, the demonic vine seemed to have made a decision. All the burning vines quickly gathered together, and then the roots of the vines were quickly cut off. All the vines that were not on fire left the area. This move surprised Yang Chen, who had always been connected to the flame. Didn't these demonic beasts completely lose their active consciousness and act only by instinct? How could this demonic vine make the decision to cut off its wrist? Chapter 1003. It was strange, but Yang Chen had to take advantage of this time to figure out the secret of the devil chi. Everything in the Sea of Consciousness was under the control of Yang Chen, and there was no defense against the attack of the monster vine phantom, allowing the monster vine phantom to attack wantonly in the Sea of Consciousness. Every time the vines of the monster vine hit any place in the Sea of Consciousness, Yang Chen would feel a fierce and incomparable aura rushing straight into his lungs, and it seemed that his consciousness would run with the unpleasant aura. Some of the negative emotions in his consciousness seemed to be magnified crazily under the attack of this devil chi. All kinds of violent and ferocious thoughts came one after another, and even Yang Chen's somewhat depressed mood because the 4 women left him to gain experience alone some time ago seemed to have been awakened, making Yang Chen very irritated again. In his previous life, because of the hatred of his master's suicide and the destruction of the sect, the anger of his own suffering for thousands of years, all kinds of negative emotions directly overwhelmed all the happiness and beauty, and his mind was completely filled with these dark and violent thoughts. The sudden change made Yang Chen almost unable to hold back. He stood up and picked up the immortal beheading blade in the blood river and slashed wildly. At this moment, the 3 purities' secret art finally underwent a powerful change. A stream of fine spiritual awareness threads suddenly spontaneously wrapped the monster vine phantom in it, layer after layer, tightly wrapped, so that the phantom could no longer touch any place in Yang Chen's Sea of Consciousness. At the same time, a cool airflow blew through Yang Chen's mind, calming his violent and frenzied heart quickly. All the impulses seemed to stop abruptly and stopped at this moment. Brush, Yang Chen's body directly broke out in a cold sweat. The scene just now was so dangerous. If he didn't control it, maybe he would end up with a heart demon. That's right, that feeling was the heart demon. Yang Chen's cultivation in this life has been smooth, and he has not encountered a heart demon, but his previous life was full of fate, and it was inevitable that he would encounter a heart demon when he was cultivating. Every time, Yang Chen relied on his strong will to avenge his master and forcibly suppressed his inner demons. In this life, although he still had the intention to avenge his master was still alive and well and had even become his wife. The tragic scene in his memory did not happen again. Not only did his master not suffer, even the sect became more prosperous with each passing day. It was no longer the kind of sect that could be bullied by others. Because of this, Yang Chen's desire to avenge his master and the sect seemed very unreal. Under the invasion of the devil chi, it naturally formed an inner demon. Not only that, just as Yang Chen had sensed before, the demonic aura had triggered all the negative emotions hidden in Yang Chen's consciousness. After accumulating, it had almost consigned Yang Chen to eternal damnation. At the thought that he had almost destroyed the immortal beheading saber that he had refined for many years, Yang Chen could not help but feel a lingering fear. Fortunately, he had cultivated the 3 purities' secret art and his spiritual awareness was extremely powerful. Otherwise, he did not know what kind of disaster would have happened. The culprit was the devil chi, but the indispensable accomplice was this demonized vine. Yang Chen's heart was filled with anger, and he directly vented his anger on the demonized vine. The 2 fire dragons of the yin-yang heaven burning fire soared into the sky and directly ignited the rattan cocoon that wrapped Yang Chen. Countless rattans, like a frightened group of snakes, flew around with flames all over the sky. There were so many rattans on fire that the demonized vine had to cut off all the rattans in this area. Otherwise, the flames would go straight to its body along the rattans. But this time, the demonized vine gave up on these branches so thoroughly that before it broke, it even retrieved all the essence in the branches. What was burned was only withered branches. The truncated rattans had no effect of shielding the spiritual awareness. Under the scan of Yang Chen's powerful spiritual awareness, Yang Chen quickly found the place where a large number of rattans gathered, which was where the main body of the demonized vine was located. It was a valley 40 or 50 miles away from here, almost 30 miles in radius, and the valley was completely filled with rattans of various thicknesses. The valley, which was dozens of feet deep, was filled with rattans. In all directions above the valley, there were countless thick rattans spread to the distance, along the ground covered by the dense jungle plants, extending in all directions. Where Yangchen was just in one direction. It was unknown when such a huge demonic vine had been contaminated by the devil chi, and in the countless years that it had lived, it had devoured countless demonic beasts that had been contaminated by the devil chi, causing the devil chi in its body to be so pure that it was unbelievable. Presumably, it was not much worse than the devil chi in the center of the devil chi explosion, right? Such a huge demonized vine, there was no leakage of demon chi or devil chi. It was a miracle. No matter who walked through this area, with their spiritual awareness blocked, they would not find anything unusual here. Silently, he would become nourishment for the demonized vine. This big guy almost made Yang Chen beyond redemption. Yang Chen certainly would not let it go. The yin-yang heaven-burning fire directly turned into two dancing fire dragons, burning all the way along the vines. Although the demonized vine had a powerful rattan, a terrifying strangulation power, and a mysterious juice that could regenerate the branches at any time, even the ordinary 4th grade and 5th grade fire seeds couldn't do anything to it, but unfortunately, it met Yang Chen. The yin-yang heaven-burning fire, which had absorbed dozens of kinds of 4th grade fire seeds in the process of rushing over the vast sea, showed its ferocity for the first time in the face of the enemy. The powerful flame, which had already surpassed the power of the 5th grade fire seed, directly strangled all the hope of the demonized vine. Wherever the flame went, the burning vines were constantly cut off by the demonized vine after it took back its essence, but the flame was still unrelenting along the vines all the way to the main body. Dozens of miles around, it was completely immersed in the terrifying sea of fire, and soon the flames surrounded the entire valley. The two fire dragons sank down and directly drilled into the valley. Boom, the valley began to explode directly, countless vines flew into the air with burning flames, and the huge main root of the demonized vine soon appeared in front of Yang Chen. Surrounded by the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, the demonized vine itself was a plant. There was no way to escape. The main root cut off all the vines, and after gathering all the essence of the demonized vine, it could only shrink into a ball of more than 10 feet and was surrounded by the two fire dragons. No matter how hard the demonized vine tried, it could not escape the fate of being killed by Yang Chen's yin-yang heaven-burning fire. The poor guy, in this large area, was simply an invincible existence, but unfortunately encountered Yang Chen, who had the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. The huge ball kept shrinking, and soon, a black ball appeared in front of Yang Chen. Looking at this huge ball, even Yang Chen could not help but be stunned. Chapter 1004. The black bead was surrounded by black mist. According to the formation process of the devilish bead that Yang Chen had seen before, this bead should also be a devilish bead. However, this size was a bit too surprising. Holding it in his hand, it felt the same as the previous small devilish bead. The problem was that the demonic baleful bead, which was the size of a human head, really gave people a very unreal illusion. Not only the size, but even the black gas that lingered on it also gave people a creepy feeling. Holding it in his hand, his ears seemed to be able to hear the roar of thousands of ghosts from the bottom of their hearts, and the wind was blowing, making people feel like they were in hell. First, he put away the devilish bead and looked around. There was nothing good left. However, there was a large number of branches that only relied on the taproot, after burning, leaving some slender fibers, which made Yang Chen very strange. With the power of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, it was not inferior to Yang Chen's sun true fire in his previous life, but it was unable to burn the whole branches. These fibers obviously had some background. Picking up a few strands, Yang Chen immediately noticed the abnormality. These fibers could actually block Yang Chen's spiritual awareness exploration. It seemed that the demonic vine's previous function of blocking spiritual awareness was because of these fibers. However, it was too far away from the taproot. Those fibers may not be strong enough and were directly burned by the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. Only the core part was left. Yang Chun immediately collected these fibers as if they were treasures, and finally, he got almost a dozen pounds. These fibers could withstand the burning of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. Obviously, they were strong enough, plus they could block spiritual awareness. It was simply the best raw material for making invisibility protective robe. With the sea-pouring jasper cup and the golden bell, Yang Chun did not need this kind of invisibility protective robe for the time being, but this did not prevent Yang Chun from making a set for each of his wives. In any case, there was such a set of clothes, even if they were worn inside, it was an effective protection for their safety. The big guy was really a big guy. Whether it was the devilish bead or this fiber, it was a great thing. After dealing with the demonized vine, Yang Chun decided to rest for a while in the valley. Previously, Yang Chun had been haunted by his inner demons, and he had not had a chance to rest. Now, he could finally relax, and at the same time, he could summarize the problems that he had just exposed. Before this, Yang Chun had always thought that he had the state of mind of a perfected golden immortal and was not afraid of inner demons. Especially in the mortal world, it was impossible for there to be any problems. But not long ago, the devil Chi had taught Yang Chun a lesson. Not only did Yang Chun have a heart demon, but it was a big one. Once it flared up, it could be a super heart demon that could cost him his life. Inner demons were a big taboo for cultivators. Basically, everyone would develop inner demons. The only difference was when and to what extent. Ordinary inner demons would appear in almost everyone. As long as one could overcome them, there wouldn't be too much of a problem. The most terrifying possibility was that a heart demon would suddenly appear during the tribulation. Therefore, the great oath of the heart demon was the most serious oath among cultivators. Because once the great oath of the heart demon broke out, it would definitely be during the tribulation. That was a 100% dead end. If one was lucky, he could leave a whole body, but if he was unlucky, he would not even have a bone left. For example, in the past, Shi Shanshan had a heart demon. Because her cultivation was stagnant, she felt useless. Yang Chen's words helped to resolve it. Now, it was Yang Chen's turn to have a heart demon. Fortunately, the heart demon appeared at this time. Yang Chen felt that he was lucky. If it happened like the last time he crossed the tribulation, he would definitely die. Something like the heart demon was actually caused by the instability of the Tao heart. In general, it was the accumulation of those negative emotions. If one could overcome it, it would be the Tao heart. If not, it would be the heart demon. There was no fixed rule for this thing. Everyone's situation was different. Shi Shanshan could have a heart demon because of the pressure of being a genius disciple. If it was Shanghai Feng, he would not have such thoughts. Naturally, he would not have such a heart demon. Everyone had their own Tao heart, and everyone had their own weaknesses, so on and so forth. To overcome the heart demon, to put it simply, it would be relatively easier if there was an expert to resolve it. However, it would not work every time. In the end, it still depended on one's own situation and one's Tao heart. Similarly, the Tao heart was actually an illusory thing. There were different ways for different people. In the face of a strong enemy, someone righteously went forward to kill them. This was the Tao heart. If someone had nothing to do with you, pretending not to see it was also the Tao heart. There were even people who could not fight and took a detour to escape. This was also the Tao heart. Whether the Tao heart was stable or not depended on whether it was constantly tempered. This was the reason why all cultivators would go out to train. Some things could not be understood by sitting there in seclusion. One had to experience some things and get used to some vicissitudes before they could understand some right and wrong. Only then could they make a choice that was in line with the Tao heart. Once the Tao heart was unstable, the heart demon would take advantage of it. To solve this problem, the only way was to constantly hone their Tao heart. This was the case for everyone. Yang Chen thought that he would not have a heart demon, but now the facts told him that even if he was the reincarnation of a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal, he would also have a heart demon. Since it was inevitable to have a heart demon, what Yang Chen had to do was to reduce the influence of the heart demon on himself as much as possible. Right now, there was a good thing to hone the Tao heart. The devil chi condensed on the devil bead was thousands of times thicker than the first one. The devil chi could easily trigger Yang Chen's negative emotions and let the heart demon break out. Many things, after experiencing too much, would become a habit and would no longer cause harm to oneself. The same was true for the heart demon. What Yang Chen needed to do was to detonate a little bit at a time and slowly let himself get used to it. Yang Chen believed that as long as he adapted to this degree of negative emotion outbreak, then maybe in the mortal world, there would really be nothing that could bother him anymore. He believed that at that time, Yang Chen's Tao heart would be like iron. In the sea of consciousness, there was also a large group of demon vine phantom wrapped in spiritual awareness threads, which was a good thing to hone Yang Chen's state of mind. Yang Chen took the responsibility to use the demonic qi and began to hone his Tao heart. This valley was a good place. For the time being, there was no one to disturb him, and there were very few demonic beasts. In addition, Yang Chen wrapped himself in the sea jasper cup, so few demonic beasts could find him. In this valley, he began to use his own demonic qi to polish his Tao heart. Chapter 1005. With the three purities secret art as a backing, every time Yang Chen released the monster vine phantom, he would face a big attack of negative emotions. The taste was really not good: irritability, sadness, despair, hatred, pain, and so on. The taste was different every time. Every time it made Yang Chen feel like dying. And every time, Yang Chen persisted. Although there were several times when he almost jumped up on impulse, Yang Chen eventually persisted. Unlike the first time when he was rescued by the three purities secret art in time, the main reason why Yang Chen persisted these days was his strong will, and it had nothing to do with the three purities secret art. Every time Yang Chen carried the negative emotions himself, tried to figure it out, and tried to control himself from doing stupid things. Every time Yang Chen experienced a heart demon, the monster vine phantom was a little weaker. After experiencing dozens of such situations, the original size of 10 feet had been reduced by at least half. At this rate, it would only take a few dozen more times, or even less, for the demonic vine phantom to completely disappear. Obviously, without replenishment, the monster vine phantom would not be able to toss for a long time. And if Yang Chen was willing, he could even consume all the monster vine phantom at one time. Obviously, Yang Chen did not want to do that. It was not easy to feel the power of some heart demons. He could still try to overcome it. How could he let go of such an opportunity? As a result, Yang Chen's eyes began to turn to the big devil bead in the separate Qiankuan bag. The demonic baleful bead was surrounded by a thick black qi. Moreover, it was a condensed demonic qi. It could definitely supplement the demonic vine phantasm. Yang Chen was not afraid of destroying the devil bead. Anyway, Yang Chen did not intend to take it. He directly explored the devil bead with his spiritual awareness and began to crazily absorb the black gas. As Yang Chen expected, it was a highly concentrated devil qi that had been condensed again. It quickly supplemented the consumption of the monster vine phantom, so that the monster vine phantom was restored to the original size of 10 feet. However, before supplementing the devil qi, Yang Chen did not forget to let the Taishaman Young sect master Li Liheng also taste this taste. Li Liheng's spiritual awareness imprint was firmly hit by one of the vines of the monster vine phantom. Li Liheng, who was far away in another continent, seemed to have suddenly entered a nightmare. The whole person became hysterical, crazy, and restless, and even directly stabbed the people around him with a sword. If it weren't for the fact that there was an elder not far from Li Liheng would definitely be able to slaughter the people around him. Even though the elder acted in time, a servant still died. Even Yang Lan, whom he doted on the most, was personally stabbed by his sword. It was just that the injury was light. Li Liheng's extraordinary performance was simply a situation of being possessed by the devil in the process of cultivation. Sect Master Li and other core elders who received the news gathered around Li Liheng and discussed how to solve this problem anxiously. Everyone was a master. Li Liheng's heart demon was obviously because in the past few decades, he had been concentrating on cultivation under the attention of the Taishaman's core senior management. He had not experienced any experience at all and his will was not strong. Perhaps it was time to let Li Liheng go out and gain experience. When the young sect master came out of the mountain, he would always be in a hurry. Moreover, Li Liheng was now the treasure of the Taishaman. How could there be any mistakes? Therefore, how to arrange Li Liheng's experience without any problems became a difficult problem for the Taishaman's top management. Yang Chen didn't care what trouble this would bring to Li Liheng and the Taishaman. He just didn't forget to find some fun for the Taishaman. After giving Li Liheng a bit, Yang Chen began to continue his own honing plan. Almost several times a day of honing, Yang Chen experienced a total of more than half a year. Once the demon vine phantom's magic power was insufficient, Yang Chen would actively absorb the magic power from the devilish bead to strengthen the demon vine phantom. The whole process was very familiar, and Yang Chen didn't even need to spend too much time thinking about it. The tempering of the mind was no less difficult than the polishing of the body and the accumulation of combat experience. In more than half a year, Yang Chen seemed to have experienced countless soul baptisms, and his spirit seemed to have been reborn. The troubles accumulated in this life also seemed to have gradually disappeared without a trace in this half a year of honing. The demon vine phantom was already very weak. Yang Chen habitually absorbed the magic power directly from the devilish bead in the Qiankuan bag, but this time when he explored it with his spiritual awareness, he absorbed nothing. In surprise, Yang Chen took out the devilish bead and was suddenly surprised. The devilish bead, which was originally surrounded by black qi, now turned golden, and there was no feeling of black qi lingering around it. Unknowingly, Yang Chen had already absorbed the demonic qi on such a large demonic bead, even the small one was not let go, and it was also cleaned up by the way. At the same time, the tiny demonic pearl also shone with a golden light, as if it was a small pill. The golden devilish bead even exuded a fragrance that people could not help but be immersed in it. It was different from the previous soul attraction that tempted people to swallow it. It was purely a feeling of taste. What was this situation? Could it be that the devilish bead was supposed to be handled like this? Yang Chen had never seen the devilish bead that had been handled before, and he could not judge the situation of the thing in his hand. Since the magic power had been absorbed, and counting the days, it was almost time to reunite with his 4 wives. Yang Chen simply shrunk into a small group of demon vine phantom and sealed it again with his spiritual awareness. He was ready to get up and rush to the gathering point, just in time to understand the devilish bead on the way. He believed that in that gathering point, there would be many people who would know what the devilish bead was. Doing what he said was Yang Chen's style, and soon Yang Chen appeared in the gathering point. There was still less than a month before the day of reunion. Yang Chen was too lazy to go out again, so he directly found a room to settle down in this gathering point that was like a Taoist market. "Shopkeeper, help me see what grade this devilish bead is." Finding a shop that specialized in the devilish bead business, Yang Chen took out the golden devilish bead that was the size of a little fingertip and put it on a jade plate on the table. The round devilish bead immediately began to roll on the plate. So small. The shopkeeper, who was disturbed by Yang Chen, was very dissatisfied and came forward from the back. He muttered impatiently from afar, but then his eyes widened, his face was full of an incredible expression, and he swooped down on the counter. "Pure golden devilish bead, how is it possible?" After carefully observing it again to confirm that it was not fake, the shopkeeper shouted directly,